Hello and welcome to the Patreon Q&A for my video on Aiken.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I had nothing to do with the video for Aiken, but I'm here.
That's not true. You helped me translate some stuff.
That's true. I translated...
You also listened to the entire script before I actually recorded it.
I did, and it was great fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I was constantly having you double check stuff for me.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was very crucial. You had a few insights that I think were really helpful.
Aww.
Making sure I had all my bases covered.
I'm so glad.
So we have a whole bunch of questions, and we're just gonna dive right in.
Sounds good. Arpeggio says, have you heard of the Weeb Ass Shit scale for rating anime? I know it from a Tumblr meme. I don't know if it predates that. And how would you rate Aiken on it? Also, have you ever played Katawa Shoujo? It's the first dating sim I ever played, and I have complicated feelings about it.
I know. I'll go ahead and answer the Katawa Shoujo question first, because it's a little shorter.
Yeah.
I've only played part of Rin.
Hanako?
Well, I played all of Hanako's route,
yeah.
and some of Rin's. Rin is the armless girl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've played those two routes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, again, I haven't played the Rin route to completion, but I did all of Hanako's.
The ending's good.
Yeah, I did all of Hanako's research for a video that is probably not going to come out until 2023 at this rate. But and then Rin's route, we started playing for leisure well before that.
Yeah. It was also my first dating sim because a lot of proper dating sims either weren't officially localized or I couldn't run them on my computer or they were adult and therefore I had no hopes of buying them. Obviously I have pretty complicated feelings about Katawa Shoujo too. I don't think I even need to explain them to anyone. It's pretty obvious what those complicated feelings might be. But for what it is made by, who it was made by, it is surprisingly heartfelt.
Yeah, I think its reputation as something that the thing that its reputation at large is kind of it's a game made by 2008 4chaners that's about disabled girls that's not horrifically offensive. Yeah. And all of that is true, but I also think it kind of overshadows the fact that a lot of the writing is really solid and that it's not just a visual novel that isn't offensive. Mm-hmm. It's also one that has animated components and a lot of different art and music and stuff. And it's such a weird triumph of a thing that exists.
Yeah, I can't believe that thing even got finished.
It kind of sounds like it almost didn't.
Yeah. I will say every route's written, I think, by a different person.
I believe
and
so,
it shows there's definitely a couple routes that I can't stand that I won't name. But I will say at least that I really liked Rin's route. I don't think she's outright officially autistic, but she definitely seems a little bit autistic coded. And I felt very seen by her route.
I think she's really cute and fun. I like her a lot.
She's very cute and fun. But yeah, anyway, Katawa Shoujo. I've heard of the Weeb Ass Shit scale because I still use Tumblr.
I had to look it up.
Really?
Yeah. What I think is really interesting, I mean, so basically the scale is that you categorize an anime on 3 different scores, 1 to 10, in how recommendable it is to people, which is basically you take Weeb, and that is... 0 is you don't need to know literally anything about Japan, to 10 being it's about fucking
it's about otaku tropes for otaku by otaku,
or even more. It's or
really deeply rooted in
what's that form of solo storytelling that still happens in Japan. There was an anime about it from a few years ago. But yeah, just very, very culturally nested is on 10. And then for the ass, it's how much fan service there is. Yeah. So 0 is there's nothing. It's Yotsuba level. 10 is just actual pornography.
Yeah.
And then shit is just how good or bad it is.
Yeah.
0 to 10. So basically the lower the score, the easier it is to recommend, if I'm understanding correctly.
So then you rate it on all 3 of those scales and someone can kind of determine how much each of those facets matters to them.
Yeah. So for Aiken, So I think this kind of proves one major flaw in it, is that I think that at a certain point, there's almost a direct correlation between how much fan service there is and where I would rank that on the weeb part of the scale. Because there's certain forms of anime fan service that I think kind of cross cultural borders.
Sure.
But for something like Eiken in particular, I feel like it's such a codified form of fan service by virtue of being so uncreative that almost makes it weebier, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would rate it like a 5 on the Weeb scale, where
Yeah.
like it's not that hard to understand.
Yeah, you might miss,
But if you're not already a weeb, you're gonna be fucking put off. Ass is like, I don't know, a 10.
Yeah. Well,
shit.
See, okay, so here's the thing, right? Like, there's no there's no exposed
hentai.
nipple, and there's no sex, but I feel
that
like it's
makes it
more
worse.
perverted.
Yeah.
For not just going all the way.
All right, so I give it a 9.5, and then on the shit scale, I give
10,
it a 10.
11.
12. Yeah. I think that's all to be said about that one. Says, you said you quite liked anime about making anime. Have you seen Shirobako or Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken? If so, what are your thoughts?
I haven't seen either of them. I've heard good stuff about both of them. That line that I put in there was not necessarily like untrue per se, but rather I was thinking more about the sort of individual episodes, like the two that I showed, and then I meant to include footage of it, but I forgot to download it. Otaku no Video.
Oh yeah.
Which is great, and probably my favorite anime about making anime that I've seen so far.
Yeah, Otaku no Video is great.
Yeah.
I was happy you got a chance to use that episode of Hoshi no Kirby.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to make anime, because that episode was like, wow. As a kid who was into cartoons, I was like, wow.
Yeah. I thought about trying to slip in the part of it that you did for the reanimate, but
nah.
I just thought it would be funny. It was a little Easter egg for you and for no one else.
Hey Sayer says, when it comes to fan service in anime, Rosario plus Vampire is the first anime that comes to mind for me. Was wondering your feelings on the show if you've seen it. I think it gets away with a lot by being entirely self-aware. And what aspects do you like and dislike about ecchi? Any particular series you think does it well?
So, this reminds me, this was two separate posts that I rolled into one from Hey Sayer, because they commented later on saying that they thought that their original comment had been deleted. It actually hadn't been, but I see a lot of people mentioning like, hey, I think my original comment got deleted on the last one or on this one or what have you. Definitely try to double check if it's not loading for you, and if your question did get deleted, I don't delete any of the comments in there, so I don't know if it's some sort of weird auto moderation thing that Patreon does, or if certain things just don't post fully or get lost in the fray. Always feel free to re-ask a question that got lost in the fray on the last one. It's totally okay if you ask a question about the last video. I know that, especially, like, I know that people don't necessarily get to all of the videos within the month that they're posted. So I like to be as flexible about it as I can, because you know, people asking are paying money.
I've never seen Rosario Vampire.
I think Rosario Vampire is I want to say it's another Jump thing, like Tolovru. But I might be wrong. I haven't seen it though, or read it. As far as aspects that I like or dislike about ecchi, I think, like, it sounds almost a little clinical to put it this way, but I feel like there's a kind of degree of, like, how do I put it? Like, there's a kind of a collective loosening of one's collar, if that makes sense, or loosening of one's tie when watching that sort of thing, where it's kind of like we all kind of mutually agree to sort of, I don't know what that sound is.
I'm pretty sure it's a weird bird.
Yeah, I think it's a weird bird. I guess it's just kind of like a sort of very lighthearted means of kind of excising the sort of like non-controversial taboo, if that makes sense. Like I guess thinking more broadly about sex comedies in general is there's a kind of like, all right, this is a space where we can just kind of like I said, just sort of like loosen our collars, so to speak.
Just let your hair down.
Yeah. And I tend to find that very charming about it. As far as what I dislike, I just hate it when it's fucking boring and repetitive, and when it is not really trying to do anything new, and when it feels like it's like really spinning its gears. As far as works that I think do ecchi well, I kind of think the gold standard is, outside of this stuff that I've covered on the channel so far, Bigara HK.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but that's like practically a shoujo almost, which I was actually gonna say, I feel like people don't talk very often about how like borderline ecchi shoujo can be, like stuff by girls for girls, like the kind of ways in which shoujo can be titillating.
That's a seinen comic.
Bigara HK?
Yeah, it's written by a woman, but it was published in a seinen magazine, which is funny because I genuinely do think it has a kind of shoujo sensibility about it.
100%. I mean, it's written by a woman about a girl. It's essentially a sexual coming of age story for her.
Yeah.
So.
And like the least like voyeuristic for men way possible.
Yeah.
While still being kind of like like having the kind of comedy appeal of an ecchi or of a sex comedy.
Well, you watched the opening for the anime. I thought it was going to be a hate watch for me. I thought I was going to watch this and be like, oh, this is trash, but it's funny trash. But the opening is kind of the trashiest part of it. The rest of it's just kind of a genuine good time.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, sorry to skip ahead, I saw that someone asked about Digipaint era, and I think Bigara HK is more recent, right?
I want to say it was 2011.
Oh, really?
Maybe 2012.
Okay, so maybe that's a little older than I thought. But I was going to say it was funny for me to see an anime like that felt very of the Digipaint era. That maybe was long after that era.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But I could be wrong on my timeline there. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like it does kind of have that kind of like...
And to clarify, this series is localized as Yamada's first time, so if you're having trouble searching Bigara HK, that's why.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like Bigara HK does feel sort of like a relic for what ecchi was like during the early 2000s, by virtue of being kind of like not quite so like tropey and codified.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we're on this weird accelerationist.
Yeah.
Accelerationist. Did I say that right?
You did.
Pace for ecchi, but that's for the ecchi psychologist to pontificate about. Arleum Boytology said, "How's your brain after all that Aiken? Also, your song list says you made a cover of Gymnopedia #1. Any intention of releasing that, whether as a Patreon exclusive or under Twinkle Park?"
So this is two questions rolled into one, just because both people asked about the Gymnopedia cover. That is going to be on a release that should be coming out next week of old and unreleased Twinkle Park material. It's like 50 songs and a bunch of commentary tracks and stuff. And that is one of the ones on there, as well as some of the other songs that I've written for various videos.
Hell yeah. Everyone look forward to it. I watched all that Aiken with Hazel, and I just kind of came out of it thinking, like... It kind of felt the way going to a dentist to get a cavity filled felt. Of, like... Oh man, when is this gonna be over?
Yeah. Like when do I get to swallow again?
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't say it was painful. It was just kind of a thing. But I really just kind of wanted it to end because I was sick of its sensory input.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
And that's kind of the only... And then if you asked me to summarize Aiken for you, I don't know if I could, even though I just watched it.
God, I fucking seriously, like, I was miserable trying to write that section. Like the bit where I'm like, I'm just not gonna talk about it. Wasn't me going into that section knowing I wanted to do that bait and switch.
Yeah.
I just hit a wall where I was like, I literally cannot bear to write about this.
Like, how do you manage to have a series where the characters go down a giant yogurt slide
and have it be that fucking
and
boring?
Have so little to say about it. Like, man.
What a waste.
What a waste. Comrade Scallion says, do you think early Digipaint is an aesthetic worth bringing back? Yeah, that's what I was looking ahead at.
So, I think that unlike cell animation, early Digipaint isn't quite so much a style that isn't around anymore so much as it is something that gradually became what anime is like today. So I feel like it's a little difficult to say like, oh yeah, this is a throwback to the Digipaint era, without it just kind of being standard definition and in 4:3.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, should early Pixar movies be an aesthetic that comes back? It's
right,
like,
yeah.
It's kind of an aesthetic born of technical limitation rather than an inherent style.
Yeah,
so.
and I feel like you kind of see it a little bit more with video games where people say like, oh, this looks like a PS2 game or oh, this looks like a PS3 game, where it's like, that is kind of a common, oh, Wander, why do you scream?
Go away, I'm recording. Go away. Your mommies are busy.
It's kind of like this dig that people use because it's not quite old enough or archaic enough to be sort of codified as an aesthetic, but it is old enough that it is archaic. And I think that that's kind of the uncanny realm where Digipaint falls into, although I'm a tremendous pervert and I would say that without a doubt I love the way the PS2 and PS3 games look, and I think that they do have a very distinct look that will be called back to deliberately with time. I just don't know that you can really do that with Digipaint, standard definition Digipaint anime.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely like a certain kind of drawing style that was popular around that time, which perhaps is more so what this question asker is asking about.
And I would say that I think that
Wonder.
It's fine, he can be up here. I think that there is kind of like, there are examples of like more archaic stylization techniques from Digipaint anime. Like I've been watching some of the key adaptations that KyoAni did. And I think it's really interesting how, like, what a how hard they commit to one stylistic decision that just doesn't really work or look good, or to replicate how like distinctive the way that the key artist drew eyes was. They drew all of the eyes and then blurred just the eyes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the coloring.
The coloring in the eyes is there's like a Gaussian blur on it, and it doesn't really look good. But you can tell that they're kind of going for that sort of glossy-eyed look. And it just doesn't really work. But if a new anime tried to do something like that now, I'd be like, oh, is this specifically trying to evoke something old?
I'm kind of curious because nobody cares about this, but DigiCarrot's new mini anime series that's coming out this fall. Obviously, if you watch the trailer, you know, it's got very modern anime colors and compositing styles, but it's kind of interesting to see them use those modern, you know, compositing styles to try to emulate Kogedanbo's old DigiCarrot art.
Which is very of its time.
It's extremely of its time, and I'm really curious to see if the full episodes kind of live up to emulating that style. I'm really excited about it in that regard. I'm also similarly anxious but curious about the new Urusei Yatsura anime. I'll be curious to see if they kind of emulate the
Yeah.
the style of coloring
Yeah.
in a long form animation well. So I'm excited about that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Hurry Up Snuffkin says, thank you for sacrificing your sanity for us, Hazel. Smiley face. I love the Kirby anime production footage. Intentionally open-ended question. What is your favorite flavor of Kirby?
My least favorite flavor is delayed Kirby. Because our package, you bought...
My fucking video game was supposed to come today and it got delayed to tomorrow. So now I get no Kirby.
We're recording this on Friday and I think it'll probably go up today as well. The day that Kirby and the Forgotten whatever comes out. And we live in the wasteland that looks conspicuously similar to the wasteland that Forgotten Land takes place in. And through some sheer act of cosmic irony, the copy that Alyssa pre-ordered got delayed.
That's okay.
However, my favorite flavor of Kirby...
mine is inner tube Kirby.
Oh, that's a really good one. See, I was thinking in terms of the spray paints from Amazing Mirror.
Oh, yeah. Dude, those colors are so good. The color palettes in that game are chef's kiss. I love melon Kirby.
Yeah, I want to say I really liked melon. I really liked grape, but my favorite was charcoal.
Oh, charcoal Kirby is great.
Charcoal Kirby is really cute.
I was also always fond of, I don't remember if it's called like chocolate Kirby, just like the brown Kirby.
Oh, yeah. It's like a really cute shade of brown.
Like shade of brown, yeah.
I really liked charcoal Kirby to the point where like I was sad when I forget the exact chronology. I want to say it was Brawl was the first one that had the dark, the black and white Kirby. I was sad that the body wasn't darker so that it looked more like the charcoal one.
Yeah.
Or maybe the charcoal one is the one that still has the colored shoes. I can't quite remember. It doesn't matter too much, but I remember I would always pick that one, even though it didn't look quite like the shade that I always used in Amazing Mirror. Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Wander's here to breathe into the microphone.
Wander's got 2006 key adaptation by KyoAni eyes.
Wow, you do. Wander, you're so cute. OJ said, what do you think is the best looking anime that came out of the Digipaint era?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's hard to say off the top of my head.
I really do think that KyoAni hit it out of the park with that era adaptation, aside from some of the more dated choices. Like, that is an anime that was made in high definition widescreen in like fucking 2005 or whenever it was.
That is a Digipaint anime.
Yeah, they were pretty ahead of the curve, but like the animation looks good. The cleanup is really impressive for some of the more detailed animation that's in it. But I also feel like that's not really like getting to the heart of the question. So I kind of want to reframe instead of picking that answer. A friend of mine observed that the early 2000s brought with it a very particular kind of aesthetic for anime that I think is simultaneously kind of a matter of where the culture was at, but also where the tools were at, where a lot of anime got like really washed out looking.
Yeah.
And really kind of cold and distant aesthetically. And I think a lot of that stuff is really appealing because it is so centralized to those first few years of Digipaint productions that were like pretty low budget and not really especially like that didn't really like leave an enormous cultural footprint in like otaku culture.
Yeah.
So stuff like Haibane Renmei is one. I know I'm blanking on some of the really obvious ones, but I watched that recently, so it was one of the first things to come to mind.
If you hear kissing in the background, it's just me kissing Wander's head. But he's being so cute.
Yeah, I usually don't let him up on the desk, but there's room for him right now. And I can tell that he feels lonely, that we're both over here without him.
Was Soul Eater Digipaint era?
It was HD. It was HD. I mean, technically Digipaint refers to literally everything, but when I think Digipaint, I think pre-HD. Yeah. Pre-HD, pre-ubiquity of CG. Soul Eater is an amazing looking anime, though.
Yeah, Bones is a great studio.
Yeah.
I just couldn't place how old Soul Eater was, so I
I
wasn't
wonder
sure
if
if that
Zetsubo
counted.
would count.
Zetsubo is so fun looking.
Yeah.
It's like not quote unquote well animated, but it's a stylish show.
It was funny going back to Arakawa.
Oh yeah. Arakawa is also one I feel fondly of.
It's extremely well.
It's ostensibly a little bit ugly, I would say.
It's really, really nicely stylized, though. It's stylized in a way that I think is kind of deliberately garish. The colors are really sort of overwrought in a way that I think is really appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I feel like there's one that is just going to come to me like a week from now.
I'm sure. It's fun. We answered as best we could. Gina7 says, I can't imagine just how emotionally and psychologically taxing the whole middle section of this video must have been to make. I honestly considered skipping when the warning popped up because the whole topic kind of sets off anxiety alarm bells for me, but I ended up just sticking it out and you handled it really well. I really like that you ended it off on a positive note with some recommendations for good shows. It was a nice little treat for getting through the more difficult stuff. Definitely hoping the next video lets you give yourself a break. That song at the end is coming along great too. I love how unapologetically Koltar it is.
Yeah.
Haha. Speaking of which, I guess I want to ask something that I think is a good pod spirit question, but you didn't end up getting around to it. As a fellow lefty who plays guitar right-handed, do you find that you struggled at all with your strumming technique at first? Because it's something I feel I struggle with a lot, and I wondered if it was because my weak hand is the one I'm using to strum. But I've seen you play pretty complicated mathy riffs and stuff really well. Do you find that being a lefty makes that harder?
I honestly find that let me hit these in order. So first of all, it was extremely emotionally and psychologically taxing. I wouldn't say I was miserable working on that section because I found it really thoroughly compelling, and I knew that I would get something good out of it if I just put in the work. But it was extremely anxiety inducing to know that it was all or nothing. Either everything fit together and I articulated myself about as well as I possibly could, or it was riddled with holes. It was very all or nothing.
Yeah.
It was
I mean, even for me as a bystander, it was kind of anxiety inducing just to be I think this is watertight, but I'm really scared I'm wrong and this whole thing is just gonna sink.
This is the first video I've ever made that I've shown to people other than Alyssa before going live. I showed it to a few friends just by sending them a Google Drive link before it went live, just to really make sure. I kind of asked them, I want you to go into this being very hypercritical, and I want you to tell me if you are able to follow me on what I get into from that perspective. And honestly, everybody who watched it came back and said yeah, no, this seems pretty airtight. But even then I was well, maybe these are friends of mine who are going to, even if they try to go into it being skeptical, they're going to see what I am going for because they know me and they know more about me than the average viewer would. Mm-hmm. And they know how to let that color their perspective. So I was still really nervous when that video went live.
Yeah.
And, aside from the typical kind of troglodytes that any YouTube video on anime gets, I didn't see a single person coming from a perspective that was partially aligned to mine disagree with it. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. I was worried that there were people who, I'm blanking on the exact way to phrase it, but
people who could be on the same page as
you, just kind of not connecting by virtue of me not connecting the dots well enough, thinking that I was saying something I wasn't.
Yeah,
and I don't think that I saw anybody read the video in bad faith. like, I think the most critical comments I got were the same kind of, like, right-wing people being like, well, the real censorship now is cancel culture. From dudes with, like, fucking MAGA icons or whatever, you know? Like, that kind of thing was about the most pushback I got, which I knew was going to happen no matter what, and I don't really care what those... Like, I'm not going to change those people's minds no matter what.
Sure.
So seeing that the response was so universally positive from the people who I really thought it counted from was just an indelible relief.
Yeah, definitely.
I was extremely, extremely relieved because there have been stages throughout my career doing this where I have put out a video with this kind of back of my mind anxiety of like, this could be the one that ruins the goodwill that I built up with people. Like, if I am wrong about, ensuring that I've put this together in a way that will make people understand where I'm coming at it from, this could be really dicey.
Yeah.
And each time I've been proven wrong, and I've been really relieved by the response that those videos have gotten.
Yeah, and I think that's one part you being really articulate, and one part your audience being just willing to hear a whole video out, which is
my audience and complete strangers.
Yeah.
Which is really
admirable.
Reassuring. Yeah, honestly,
it's heartening. 'Cause
it is.
Sometimes on YouTube comments, I'm like, man, do people like understand things that they listen to at all?
Yeah.
But your audience has been surprisingly good about that kind of thing.
It's really it's really meant a lot, and I think that it has genuinely done more for my perception of, like, I don't know, like, the internet's general media literacy than I think I would have realized was out there if I wasn't doing this, if I didn't have this channel. So it means a lot. It means a lot, and it's really reassuring.
Yeah.
So all of that emotional and psychological tax was well worth it.
Hell yeah.
As far as playing guitar, so I answered that question on the podcast, but it was the episode where we had Adam Demergen on, and that episode required a lot of editing because there was a third person with some variable connection speeds. So I wound up having to kind of chop stuff up and fit it around to listen, to be a little bit more listenable and to have a little bit more of a conversational flow. That was the one thing that I just couldn't quite squeeze in, was my answering that question. But essentially my answer is that, like, I've been playing guitar, quote unquote, right-handed for so long that it just kind of is playing guitar left-handed to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't...
Like, in some ways, I almost wonder if a left-handed guitarist has some advantages, because for me, when I was young and learning guitar, because I'm right-handed,
yeah,
I had a lot of trouble feeling like my left-hand fingers were dexterous enough to, like, make the chord shapes I wanted to make. So it's, like, kind of like, yeah, like, your right hand's going to be a little stronger and more coordinated at strumming, but your left hand needs to be coordinated in a similar but different way. So it's kind of like, I don't really think you have an advantage or disadvantage as long as you're really probably better off just you start playing it right-handed and keep it going.
So the thing about it too is that, like, I almost think it's a little bit of a myth that being right or left-handed actually has that much of a difference on
how you play.
Like, it is such a fundamentally different skill set than everything else that you have been doing long enough that it's pure muscle memory with your dominant hand that I don't really know how much it translates.
Yeah.
When I first started guitar, I went into it thinking I was going to need to do it left-handed. And because I was picturing, what direction the guitar would be going in, it was a little hard for me to switch it initially. But that was maybe half a week of me getting used to it. And then after that, you know, I couldn't imagine there having been much benefit to me doing it the other way.
Yeah.
Because, like, especially, like, I was so flat broke when I, like, throughout basically the entirety of the time that I've been making music, that, like, or rather, you know, I just didn't have a budget for music specifically, that if I had learned left-handed, it would have been so much more expensive. Yeah. Left-handed guitars are more niche, so they tend to be more expensive. A lot of models just never got made left-handed.
Yeah. Most left-handed people I know who play guitar learned just right-handed guitar for that reason. Like, I don't want to have to pay the left-handed toll just to play guitar. Might as well just learn it right-handed and get used to it.
Yeah.
Codfish Cartographer says, I noticed you use the Fire Punch grin face a lot in your videos. What are your thoughts on Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man, if you have any?
I love them both very dearly. I think that everything Tatsuki Fujimoto's done has been really next level.
I'm excited for the Chainsaw Man anime.
I'm extremely excited for the Chainsaw Man anime.
I want to hear Power's voice.
I know, yeah. We haven't even heard any of the voice cast yet, have we?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'm really excited for part 2. But honestly, I heard that Fujimoto's working on another one-shot right now. I'm kind of more excited to see him continue doing one-shots than more serialized works. Like, I love Chainsaw Man, and I loved Fire Punch as well. But I think Look Back might be the best thing he's ever done, and that's a single volume.
I should read it.
It's really good. It's really incredible.
That
dude's making films.
Yeah. Linus Wood said, this is an impulse coming off the pure sadness I get from this anime and everything surrounding it that you talked about. But can we get an AVGN-esque video of you destroying your Aiken Blu-ray in a creative way? Maybe just a blunt, low-effort hammer attack. I think that's all it really deserves. Thank you.
I like the comedy intrinsic of having it on my shelf too much to destroy it. I also like the comedy of, like, donating it to a Goodwill or something like it too much to destroy it if I ever decide to get rid of it. If you were to do that, though, how would you destroy it in a way that is fitting to Aiken?
Me?
I think we'd have to send it down a yogurt slide into the trash.
Oh, the thought of wasting that much yogurt makes me sad.
The smell is, I think, what really kills me in conceptualizing the yogurt slide.
Now I'm sad. Glorkin said, what is your favorite fighting style or signature move from Keijo?
What's yours?
I mean, I always think about the Cerberus girl just because I think that was the moment when I first watched the show where I was like, this show's fucking crazy.
That's the like immediate sales pitch. Like, it's kind of hard to say, like, oh yeah, there's a girl who catches asses in other girls in her own ass, because that kind of makes it sound like it's a lot more perverse than it is.
Yeah. No.
But if you just say, there's a girl whose ass is possessed by Cerberus. That is kind of the, like, one sentence sales pitch.
Yeah. You get the whole idea of how silly it can be.
I really like the girl who gives herself a titty twister so hard that she gets sword nipples. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
I've felt that way before. Elias Rosner says, since it was such a big part of the video, I gotta know, what's your favorite Alan Smithy film if you have one?
So I actually haven't seen any of his films. However, the honorary answer would have to go to Maniac Cop 3, because the first Maniac Cop was written and co-produced by Larry Cohen, who's one of my favorite exploitation film guys. If you have any vague interest in getting into exploitation films and you have a background in like kaiju and like that kind of B-movie, please watch Q the Winged Serpent. I think that's a really beautiful entry point. There's a lot of good he would I talked a little bit about this in an episode of Pod Spirit that's coming up, but he would do the majority of his filming on the streets of LA without a permit.
Oh my god.
So there would just be random bystanders just around while he's got this film crew filming like fucking fake body parts falling from the sky and shit like that.
Hell yeah. The wickedly talented Adele Dazeem says, I just started watching Keijo. Great show. I enjoyed it more than JoJo so far. Hell yeah, Keijojo's Bizarre Adventure. Are there any other female-led shoujo style battle anime you recommend? Watch Angelic Layer.
Oh, that's a really good answer.
Angelic Layer was clamping like, let's make a shonen anime, but for girls, but also for boys. And it's great.
I haven't seen it. I guess by that mark, I would say that it's if you want like a really if you want like a real answer, like zero caveat answer, like Card Capture Sakura is one of the best like long form.
I don't know if I'd call that a battle anime though.
No, but it is a monster of the week kind of thing, and I think as far as that sort of format goes, it's one of the best. But I guess like shonen battle anime,
Angelic Layer,
is a little harder to come by.
Yeah,
maybe, I mean, female led, like I guess Soul Eater would count.
Soul Eater kinda, but Maka's a great character, so
yeah, she's great.
She's my daughter. TK said, hey, so this is a long one, so having grown up in the era of dying movie stores with beaded backroom doorways and seen the internet bloom and basically have no partition from mild to wild other than, are you 18? Yes or no? I have been, goddess help me, thinking of the children and how to best be part of nerdy spaces that are safe for the youths and people with adult interests. Like, I feel like there's a real comparison to people stressing out about leather daddies and kink at Pride who have long-standing history in supporting LGBTQA+ efforts, but still make some people uncomfortable, and the really pervy booths at the anime con, whose rent helps the con exist, and the 10-year-old Pokemon fans walking by it. Also, there is the fact that people speaking frankly about sex in geeky spaces has been a boon to many young people with internal struggles and existential questions about their identities, which they often can't get answers from their core caregivers nor standard sex ed, but as you yourself expressed, some fairly positive chagrin about how available adult content was to you as a youth and now via internet. Do you have any thoughts on how older geeks and or event/space/digital/physical organizers can do to balance youth safety and curiosity?
So I think this is a really, really great question that I don't have an answer to, and I feel really bad about that. There were a few other questions that were very thought-provoking that I had to cut because unfortunately, I'm not someone that I think people go to because I'm good at raising questions.
Yeah.
I think I'm much better at kind of regaling histories and sort of giving, in a sense, answers to certain realms of those questions.
Or like providing context.
Yeah, providing context. And I think that I wouldn't feel good about giving my sort of ideas about that or my feelings about it if feelings are all that they are.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I can do that with like how did I feel about a piece of media because the stakes are inherently so low. But for something like that, I wouldn't want to say something that I couldn't like 150% back up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like this is a question about like real life situations and not just about how we feel about a piece of anime. So our answer inherently holds a lot more
implication here.
I kind of think that I know that people don't like wishy-washy answers like this, but at least for me personally, I kind of feel like this is the sort of thought process and cluster of issues that there's no clear answer to, because there's so many different kinds of people of so many different ages with different comfort needs, with different emotional needs, with different cultural needs. I mean, even just something as simple as like what any given person's level of taboo as far as sex and nudity goes is like highly cultural and contextual. A lot of it has to do with how much someone's parents are talking to them about certain things and how prepared they feel to see it. What can be traumatizing for one child can be freeing for another, and that's a hard thing to put a black and white like rule set onto.
Yeah.
I do think it's something that places should be more conscientious of, especially if there's going to be a lot of children there. For something like an anime con, I have seen anime cons where they kind of like almost erect like temporary walls around like the 18 plus section. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and then like I know a lot of cons will either have like certain panels that are specifically boarded off as being 18 plus, or they'll do those late at night.
They've gotten a lot better about that too since I was a kid, because when I was a kid I could just wander around the tables and stumble upon an enormous box of 18 plus yaoi and be like, whoa, okay, I didn't mean to open this box. Yeah. Now, you know, tablers are obligated to ask for identity before they can even like let you see that kind of thing. Stuff's wrapped up, etc., etc.
And I truthfully, like, the one thing I'll say is that I think for something like an anime convention, I think it should just like absolutely, like, no matter how you cut it, doujinshi, and like that whole realm of like adult anime is really, really important to not only anime and manga and like otaku culture as a whole in Japan, but also how American fans intersect with it.
Sure.
So I think that sort of thing should always have some kind of a presence in cons for as long as there's a I guess a market for it, for as long as it makes sense to be there.
Oh, sorry, Wonder, sorry. Yeah, I mean,
but I also think that it is really important that the kids, like, I fantasized about getting to go to anime cons as a kid, and I didn't get to until I was an adult.
I mean, this is purely anecdotal, and this is why I don't feel comfortable saying, like, oh, well, I felt this way, so everyone should feel this way. But when I was a kid, and I went to anime cons, and I saw, you know, dudes with their ass cheeks out, and big booba cosplay, I don't know, like, it's contextual, right? So
That's
it's kind of like, I am in a place where there are freaks and geeks. I'm going to see freaky and geeky things here, and that is just okay. Like contextually, I knew it came with the territory, and therefore it did not shock me all that much. And when you think about the history of anime cons, at least in America, they kind of rode off of sci-fi conventions, which were predominantly adult men. Like, I mean, I never went to a sci-fi convention back in the 80s and 90s, so I can't really say. But from seeing archival footage, it seems like there's... I
mean, even early anime conventions, there aren't very many children. Like, I think we might be the first generation of children who in America who had access to anime conventions at all. And I think that it kind of makes sense that it was difficult for like almost sort of unprecedented the way that children's presence in those things had ramped up over time.
But yeah, so I mean, my point just being that anime cons probably kind of were already set up over here to be predominantly dominated by adult men comfortable with seeing adult content. And, you know, I don't know, should we make, like, a children's anime con for just children's anime?
And then, like, if you do that, inherently it's going to...
How do you protect them? How do you make sure it's...
How do you make something like that lucrative?
Need Chuck E. Cheese rules where it's like you have to be a parent, no adults allowed?
Yeah.
I don't know, that kind of stuff's really hard to moderate and keep safe in a physical space. So
and that's why
it's hard.
I feel like, I just, like... The big reason why I feel like, you know, even though we have sort of addressed this question, the reason why I don't feel very confident in my ability to kind of address it as a whole is that I don't know that there's much precedent set for much of any consistent way of operating spaces like that. In real life or online, for that matter.
Yeah, one thing I will say about online, and this is... I was like, I'm not going to answer this question, and then I said 10 paragraphs worth of shit, but... One thing I will say is that I think this recent shift of discomfort from different people of different ages commingling in fandom spaces, aside from the fact that more people at younger ages have constant access to the internet than they did back in the 90s and early aughts, comes from the fact that we're all on social media websites like Twitter, and Twitter does a shit job of giving creators control over who sees their content.
And I would say that that's true too of people looking for content.
Yeah, well, it's really fucking hard to like filter what you're looking for on Twitter. And I think this lack of control that social media now gives to creators in catering their audience and an audience's catering what they get to see kind of creates this unfortunate side effect of like everyone being like, okay, well, if everyone's going to see everything needs to be okay for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's even hard for people who like really carefully label their accounts. Like, I draw 18 plus Dragonvore. Like, people can just stumble across their stuff unwittingly, and then it's like, that sucks for the creator who doesn't want people not interested in seeing the content, and that sucks for the people who didn't want. And Twitter, I don't know, I really wish Twitter would give people more live journal-esque control over their content.
Yeah, like imagine if there was just like a toggle. Like this is bare minimum, but if there was a toggle that was like, don't make my page visible to people without Twitter accounts.
Yeah, or don't make my page visible to people whose birthday is listed as being younger than a certain age. Or I
think that I even find myself having to reconcile with this in terms of like I still act under the assumption at a baseline that my audience is entirely people around my age. Mm-hmm. And I have to reconcile with the fact that like there are people that are a good 5 years younger than me in my audience, and that feels weird to me alone, even though 5 years younger than me is still 20 years old. Every now and again I get comments from people who are under the age of 18, and it's like, for me, when I was their age, I was watching so many adult-oriented video series, like I mean, even right down to like AVGN. Like every kid that I knew online was watching AVGN, and things that were even like more risque than that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I grew up in the era where watching like shock content was kind of a group bonding experience for kids.
And I don't know.
Not that I think that that's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but
rather that like I have to compartmentalize that with the fact that it also at a baseline makes me kind of uncomfortable and kind of call into question my own ethics to be making a video like the one that I did about Aiken. Yeah. Knowing that inherently, when I say we're all adults here, that's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But also in turn that me saying I don't want people who aren't adults to watch this stuff.
So the solution is, if you're going to watch Hazel's video about Aiken and you're under the age of 18, make sure you ask your mom or your dad to watch it with you.
Yeah, and then they can give you the context that you need about any of the things that I take for granted. Jesus Christ. Yeah, see, like, it feels so weird to have to contend with that. But then also to know that a video like that, if I had seen it at a young age, it would have been extremely elucidating, and it probably would have really benefited me had I been emotionally mature enough to take it at face value. Yeah. And those are, you know, there's so many caveats within every little thing about that I just said that I don't know. I've got no idea where the ethics fall within that for me, for people watching, for people sharing it. I have no idea.
I mean, where you're concerned, you make it clear what kind of content your videos cover, and then unfortunately the onus kind of falls to whoever decides to click on it anyway. Yeah. But, you know, that's why this is a complicated question and a complicated subject. There's so many ways to look at it, so many different angles to take it from. It's hard to give a black and white, like, well, we should just do this answer. And it kind of sucks. And, you know, I actually, even though I'm kind of chaotic in terms of like, just leave the porn artists alone. Like, who cares? I do also think a lot about children online, like, I get kind of stressed out at the thought of children using TikTok all the time, and like what kind of stuff that algorithm might show them, and what kind of ideas they might internalize from that. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with both thinking of the children and thinking of content creators. Both of those things can coexist, and both can be important to you. I think it's just important also for people to, I don't know, give each other some good faith benefit of the doubt, because I think a lot of people are just trying to do their best with an internet format that is not conducive to anybody involved here.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of my final thought on that.
Yeah. So all of that being said, don't feel like you can't ask questions that do tackle bigger things, because you know, there are some things that I think are a little bit easier to answer. I just think that, like, please don't be too disappointed if there are things that I would love to answer but don't feel like I can, because they're so loaded in so many other regards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
there's some questions that you get where I'm like, that needs a whole video's worth of
exactly,
research before you can answer
exactly. And that's not to say that they make for bad questions. Just that, like, if I were to give my slapdash answer, and then a year later I do research for something else and I come to uncover more context that makes me feel differently, or if my feelings and opinions on things just sort of continue to form outside of that, I then have to look back at that and go, well, fuck.
I mean, inherently a loaded question requires a longer, more nuanced answer than can be fit into a tweet.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is to say, we appreciate complicated questions. Don't be offended if they don't always get answered. It's not for lack of interest in them.
Or for disagreement with, like, the fundamentals of the question or anything like that either. I just kind of find that I want to make sure I really mean what I say. Yeah.
I don't mean anything I say. I tell only lies.
Okay.
Abigail Petchy says, did you ever get in trouble for reading manga in school? I used to be obsessed with Love Hina in middle school, and I forgot a volume under my desk once, and some kids stole it and narked on me, saying there was lots of boobies, so manga was banned from my school.
That kid. Fuck that kid. I
was homeschooled.
I didn't get in trouble for reading manga because my school had a small section of manga. I got in trouble for reading it when I should have been paying attention. And I always worried that I would get in trouble if my parents found some of it. Even though they never did, because I was very careful.
What was your most incriminating manga that you owned?
That I owned?
Yeah.
The second volume of Case Closed, of the Viz pressing of it, had the main girl in nothing but, like, a pair of panties, and you could see her through, like, a keyhole shape on the back, and so she's kind of got her arm covering her breasts. You can kind of see her hip and the fact that she's clearly just wearing panties. And I, like, that's not even a sexy series.
Sure.
Like, I was reading it because I knew that it was I was such a fucking nerd. I was reading fucking Detective Conan at, like, age 12 because I knew it was historically important. And I was like, this is a really important series. I should read it. And because I was interested in the sort of format of mystery stories.
My most incriminating manga I owned was a imported copy of Mahonyanyan Taruto. And, you know, this is its own can of worms that I'm not going to get into because I don't feel like it. But let's just say that when you're a kid who loves anime, sometimes you think stuff is aimed at kids that isn't. So there's a lot of, like, half-naked little cat girls in there that maybe were or weren't meant to be titillating. But the thing that really shocked me as a kid was there's a panel of the little cat girl meeting an older cat girl who's got, like, huge boobies, and she, like, sinks her hands into it, and it does, like, the, like, you know when hentai draw someone grabbing a tit and their fingers just, like, sink into it like a marshmallow?
Like, that's, like, the first shot of Aikon.
Yeah. Her hands kind of do that, and I was like, or maybe not, maybe I'm misremembering it a little, but either way, I was shocked by her grabbing the older girl's tits, and I was like, oh, man, I didn't know it was gonna have stuff like this in it. I just wanted to watch cute anime
because I feel
cat
like
girls.
Demographics play out so differently in the States, where, like,
Well, I think the anime was more geared towards children too, which was kind of
weird.
Oh,
interesting.
And I watched some of the anime, so I imported the manga. And
But I think that, like, in general, there was a kind of trend in the States where, like, if a show was for girls, it would have girl protagonists.
Yeah.
And if a show was for boys, it would have boy protagonists.
It took us a while to realize sometimes the girls were also for boys.
Yeah, exactly. And that sometimes the boys were for girls.
Yeah. It took me until Lucky Star before I was like, hold on.
The fact that it was that for you is so funny.
Yeah.
Like, I know that was more a matter of the time that it came out.
Well, yeah, I was a little older by then, so I was kind of like, hold on now. I think perhaps this is for boys.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hid that volume of Taruto.
Yeah.
And, like, the back, like, I hid it, like, sideways behind all of my manga so that it wasn't visible.
We have there's a manga or two that is sat like that in our shelf right now, but not because we're hiding it, just because there's no other room
for
space.
It. Yeah.
So it was funny, like, I was instantly able to picture what you mean by that.
Yeah.
So that was probably the most incriminating that I owned, but I would take the occasional volume of Ranma home and stuff it under, like, 3 other books at the bottom of my
hella
backpack.
Boobies in Ranma.
With nipples.
Yeah, I have questions I wish I could ask Rumiko Takahashi, but out of respect for her, I won't.
Yeah. Chiefly among them, I thought a joke would come to me, but it didn't. That's fine.
That's okay. It's okay if you're not funny.
It is.
I love you.
I love you.
Anchor says, did you know you can import a Super Cub for hella cheap straight from Japan, and they even come branded with Kumamon and shit. They're cheaper and more feature-rich than the US Super Cub, and you don't even have to register it because it's got such a little motor. But that's only if you get the 50cc. I did research. It's not cheaper to ship it over, but you can buy them in the US for $4K. And motorcycle riding classes will be starting in, like, May. This week's Patreon question is brought to you by Super Cub. If you use our code SuperCub69 right now, you can get $1 off of importing.
So this is a conversation that Anchor and I were having.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Anchor and one other friend of mine were the two people to recommend Super Cub to me, which then caused us to watch it together, which then got us both looking at Super Cub prices online.
I want a Super Cub.
I know.
But I'm scared of motorcycles.
I would absolutely die.
I mean, if it was something as small as a 50cc, I have to imagine it's a little bit, like, less intimidating to ride than a motorcycle, but...
If we ever live somewhere that's a little bit more spread out with a little bit worse public transportation, I think that's something worth looking into.
Yeah. They're just so cute, too.
I know. That anime bike pilled me.
It also bike pilled me.
And I'll be talking about it in my next video out on Wednesday.
Oh, it's so soon.
I know.
Oh, God. Are you going to be okay?
It's getting down to the wire, but I think I can do it.
Ali Motamed says, do you have any idea what you might have chosen career-wise if YouTube, music, or any other independent artistic career didn't pan out? Also, what chair do you sit in when working? Would you recommend it? If not, do you have any chairs that you're planning on getting? I mean, Hazel did the not YouTube or music thing for quite a while.
Well, so how do I put this in a way that doesn't sound really, like, loaded or heavy? I've always been of the mindset that I'm going to work toward making art a career basically until the day I die. That, like, I didn't think that I could ever be satisfied doing something other than art for a living, and that would always be my goal while doing other stuff. And so the fact that I've achieved that at all is still kind of crazy to me. And, that's why, I've always said, like, there's nothing I'd rather be doing more than this. And I mean that completely wholeheartedly. I've always been someone who's had a really hard time putting my all into something that I don't really fully care about or believe in. But that's not to say that I didn't also think about things outside of that. in the back of my head long term. Obviously this is still artistic in its own right, but there was a while where I was considering being like a music producer, like an audio engineer, recorder, or like a mixer master.
A masturbator.
Yeah, a masturbator. I can't say it. I'm a woman on the internet, Alyssa.
Sorry.
I can't just say that shit.
Sorry.
If I was some Joe AVGN, it would be so funny. But someone's gonna make it weird. But yeah, I was definitely considering doing something like that. And that was kind of what Pop Spirit was for me for a long time, was this sort of like, it was something that I was comfortable with the idea of figuring out how to make that a living. Would that ever prove to pan out? But outside of that, if it didn't require going to college, which was never going to work out for me, which is why I never went, I loved the idea of being a teacher or being a substitute teacher. I had such a terrible time in school that even when I was still in high school, I often thought, like, I would really like to be able to do this and make it a better experience for kids like me. But obviously, I know that a lot of the teachers that I had that were bad, it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah.
I know that they were doing their best to work within an incredibly rigid and conservative system for less money than they should have been making, while doing more work than was asked of them.
Yeah.
On paper was asked of them.
Yeah.
But, I guess in a sense I am kind of doing that a little bit now. Teaching. I think that's a little self-aggrandizing to frame it quite that way. But I do like the idea of, or I did always like the idea of teaching as I guess I could go back to school and get a degree, and do that if art hadn't panned out for me. But currently it has. So hopefully it'll continue to.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'm an artist. I have always said that if I did my life differently and classed my EXP into a different category, it would have been linguistics. I would have loved to have been a translator.
Yeah.
I wish I had the time and energy and brain hard drive space for learning more languages.
I think that's something I probably would have been like. That was something I didn't think was ever an option for me, because I tried learning a second language in high school and I got D's each semester.
You got D's nuts.
Yeah, I sure did. But, obviously I realized retroactively, like, oh, wait, language is super fucking interesting to me.
Yeah, language is super fun.
And it is incredibly applicable to learn a second language. So I think that, like, yeah, if I had known that was something that was going to be beneficial to me and that I would find a lot of passion in, probably would have looked into doing that sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. What chair do I sit in when working?
This chair fucking sucks. I regret getting them.
It's fine. This chair is pretty uncomfortable. I have to alternate having a pillow in it as an extra cushion and not, for some variability in how I'm sitting.
Yeah, and if you move it all, it creaks loudly.
Yeah, if you've ever heard weird, fucked up creaks in these...
Yours is actually better than mine.
Well, it is for right now for some reason.
When I'm moving mine, it, like, cracks.
When I'm recording, there's, like, a terrible click that it makes that causes me to have to retake certain lines. So I don't recommend it. I don't even know what it's called. And the one that I have is it literally shipped broken. I'm sitting in a pre-broken chair. They sent us another one that we were like, well, we'll just keep that one for when this one gets too fucked up to use.
Yeah.
But I also use chairs until they fucking combust.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to be stuck with this for a long time. However, I would probably recommend stuff by Herman Miller, which is, like, those chairs are like $1 billion, but I hear word on the street is that you can get them basically brand new on Craigslist pretty regularly for severely discounted, because tech startups, always going out of business. So yeah, scope out Herman Miller, I think Aarons or what they're called.
Gotcha.
On Craigslist.
What do you think of this kombucha? Isn't it weird?
I like it.
You like it?
I mean,
it's so bitter.
It is, yeah. I don't even know what a puer is.
I don't know what a puer is either. I just saw wild honey and I was like, honey. But it doesn't taste like honey. Joe Uglick says, have you ever watched any seasons of FLCL and what did you think of them?
I've only seen the original. I think you asked this question before the 2 extra seasons were announced, so good timing on that. I was never interested in progressive and alternative, and I'm not very interested in shoegaze and grunge, I think, are the 2 other sequels that are coming out.
Goofy names.
The original was probably the most formative piece of media for me ever, even if it's not one that I would consider like a favorite now. Rather, like, when I say it is the single most influential piece of media I've ever engaged with, that does not also by extension mean that it's my favorite or that it means the most to me, if that makes sense.
Fun fact, FLCL is one of the few pieces of media Hazel and I vehemently disagree on.
Yeah.
I hate FLCL and I refuse to extrapolate.
I love it still.
That's valid.
And I'll always love it.
That's valid.
Next question.
Just kidding. Namo says, what did you like most about the Anne of Green Gables anime?
I liked how surprisingly gay it was.
Yeah, the
I know that's like a very
as well.
Yeah, I know that's like a very simple answer, but I thought it was extremely like I know that this sounds kind of homophobic to say, but it was really funny. Like, the ways in which it was gay were really, really funny because they were so, like, hysterical and melodramatic and so completely oblivious to that subtext that every time it happened, I just kind of sat back in my chair and went, like, what the fuck did you think you were making?
Yeah, I mean, I think the author went on record as saying she was surprised anyone saw a gay subtext, but then it would be like... And then Anne was throwing herself on the floor, crying and shitting and vomiting because Diane
might get married to a man one day.
And the thought disgusted her. And then they introduced a male love interest for Anne, and I feel like I remember her not even, like, she's just kind of like an asshole to him. Like, he is the guy she breaks a chalkboard over
his head. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, that girl is never gonna marry a man.
Yeah.
But then she does, and you're like, oh.
The anime adaptation doesn't get to that.
Well, that's good.
I also thought that the backgrounds were really beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, it seems beautiful from the stills I've seen.
Yeah, I also think, like, 50 episodes is very long, but I think that its length and the construction of it with its length was really incredible. Like, the kind of, like, almost, like, spiral path that you could draw in terms of the sort of arc that it takes and how long it takes with the different years in the life of Anne Shirley. I thought was really interesting and really masterful.
Hell yeah. Bathe Styles says, I really liked the edits you made to the recordings of you speaking, and I was curious how that came about. Was there any reason behind it, or was it just an, oh, this looks cool thing?
So that's specifically in reference to the
live action footage.
Pseudo live action footage. Yeah. That was literally just me. I did it in the Vlad Love video to kind of like quote unquote make fun of how Vlad Love has a lot of really overwrought stylistic decisions that don't really add up to anything. Like, that comes in that Vlad Love video is like a really like non sequitur thing. It's literally just me doing a really half-assed my quick thoughts on like a fucking Monster Energy beverage that you had bought me on a whim.
Yeah, that's right.
And I decided to do it again there just because I think it's fun. I try not to muddy the information that I'm giving with very like overwrought kind of like dense visuals like that are very sort of like internet-y, I guess you could say. So when I kind of get to let loose for sections like that, I have a lot of fun.
Hazel loves to obfuscate herself.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
Hazel loves to be data moshed. Siobhan says, this is pretty off topic and mostly just for lists, I think. That's me. But do you have any recommendations for someone looking to get into visual novels or just recs for your favorite visual novels? Thanks. Okay, so this is my pirate's curse. I don't know if that's a phrase anybody says. It's not. This is my curse. I have to write down every single thing I engage with and like, otherwise I will forget that I've engaged with it.
Yeah, why aren't you on like
I know, I need to be on more like media.
You gotta get on like my anime list and stuff.
I have on my anime list.
That's right.
Specifically, but I still think it's missing like 50 anime I've seen and forgotten I've seen.
Yeah. When Brian was setting up his, he literally went through every single year of anime from like 1942 all the way to present to mark everything he'd seen.
Off the top of my head, I think I've recommended this one in the past. And this is kind of like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's the first one I think of when I think of like a good visual novel to recommend, just because like in terms of visual novels slash stat building simulators, I think that this is kind of like the most like, yeah, that's a visual stat game. Like, it's just like the platonic ideal of that. So I really like The Royal Tutor. It's getting a sequel soon, which I'm pretty excited about. I have a soft spot.
Wait, The Royal Tutor?
I'm sorry, I fucking meant The Royal Alchemist.
Okay, yeah, I was like, The Royal Tutor is that anime that...
Cut that out.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to cut it out. You've corrected me.
No! I hate when I say things wrong.
No, it's fine.
The Royal Alchemist.
We've made the name more memorable to the audience by making that digression.
I have a soft spot for Doki Doki Literature Club. Let me think. I've been playing Cafe Enchanté, which is for the Switch, and it's really cute. Just like wholeheartedly charming characters. I haven't even gotten onto a proper romance route yet. I'm still like on the general route. And it does a thing that not enough dating sims do, where like all the love interests have an interesting interconnected dynamic with each other. Often I find that unless like characters get paired off as friends in romance games, like they're kind of like isolated from each other. That's even a problem I've run into before trying to write dating sims in the past, is like, what are these characters like dynamics outside of the protagonist? Let's see.
I think rather than giving specific titles a recommendation, I'll say that if you have like basically any device, any game console that you can soft mod, there's probably a VNDS port for it, which will give you access to more or less bootlegged versions of a lot of the really seminal Japanese visual novels.
See, it's kind of interesting. I feel like I actually have a surprisingly large blank space where like proper like seminal Japanese.
Yeah, so do I. And I think a lot of other people do. I more so
play indie visual novels.
I think a lot of other people do as well, and I think part of that is because pretty much all of them are eroge.
Yeah.
So, which is to say that if you have an aversion to that aspect of those, a lot of those games now have console ports, and if they're on console, they don't have sex scenes. So keep an eye out for those releases if you're interested in seeing those kinds of games, but you don't want to have to deal with the very, like, almost all of them, the sex is extremely arbitrary.
Yeah.
It's just there because it had to be to sell units at Comic Cat.
I know this will sound kind of cheap to say, but also in terms of indie visual novels, if you want to just browse the free section for visual novels on itch.io, I highly recommend it. That can be kind of a good gateway into like figuring out what you like, figuring out what tags you're interested in, where to browse, and then you can start branching out and buying stuff, you know, either by creators who've put out free stuff that you liked, or a lot of people put free demos up as well, or a lot of indie visual novels on itch are pay what you want, which is nice. There's just a whole wealth of good visual novels out there these days, so there's all kinds of all kinds of things. I had an old visual novel, like, sort of solo book club thread on my old Twitter that I should probably bring back again and just make into, like, a moment or whatever, where I would just tweet what I'd played recently and what I thought of it in a few short words. Yeah, sorry, that was kind of a long-winded, not very specific answer, but I love visual novels. Platon Pizza 3000 says, have you ever read Shuzo Oshimi's manga? Reading Inside Mori in the middle of my adolescence sure was a ride.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I say Mori or Mari?
Yeah, it's Inside Mari.
I misread it.
It's okay. Inside Forest.
Yeah, should I?
Yeah, I've read Inside Mari. I've read a lot of his stuff. I haven't read Happiness yet. I haven't read Blood on the Tracks, but I've read the majority of his stuff, like a lot of his back catalog. Aku no Hana is one of my favorite comics, period. I have an Aku no Hana tattoo. That work is really incredible and really masterful. I really adore Inside Mari. I think it's a really good deconstruction of like the kind of body swap archetype that's kind of like all over manga within that demographic, and how it kind of forces the predominantly male viewer base to kind of like confront the fact that, like, you know, that is a story that is that kind of forces focus to be shifted back onto the woman and her feelings, rather than it being some sort of like voyeuristic look into her life, from a male perspective. I mean, I think that comic is probably the best of the ones that I've read of his, but I think Aku no Hana is still my favorite, if that makes sense. Yeah, I like his stuff a lot. Yeah. Nice.
I've never read it.
I think you'd really like Inside Mari.
I'll read it someday.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I'll tell you about it after we record. I don't want to spoil anything.
Hell yeah. Omi Machine says, what do you dislike about Nakashima Kazuki's works? Does this extend to other members of the Gainax Trigger Gang like Imaishi?
So I used
Time for Hazel to lose some patrons.
No. So I used to blame Imaishi for a lot of this stuff. But I realized when I was looking into the works that I disliked, the name that was consistent among all of them was Kazuki. I would say that I generally like Imaishi. I think that he's kind of like he's got dumb guy energy in a way that I think is charming more often than not. I know a lot of people say that he's style over substance, but I think that it's fine for style to be the substance some of the time. I think his work on a lot of the like 90s Gainax anime is like really fantastic. He did a lot of my favorite scenes and a lot of my favorite like one-off. He did, I think, like my favorite one-off episode. Maybe that's not an accurate way of putting it. He did a one-off. The only episode of Kare Kano that is not based on anything from the manga was an episode that he did that I think is a lot of fun and really weird. And really charming. And he did a lot of my favorite scenes animation-wise from Kare Kano. So I would say that I'm generally pretty Imaishi positive. However, I do think the elephant in the room is Nakashima Kazuki, and I literally... It sounds so mean because I know there are so many people that like what he does, and I know that this is an incredibly dismissive and probably a little bit of an insulting way for me to put this, but I have racked my brain and I don't know of any other way to say it, so I have to speak my truth. The guy's dumb. I think the guy's dumb. I think he writes like a dumb guy, but not in the charming way. He writes like, you know, that like rage comic face of the guy who's got his arms folded and he's got like the really like
I think today I will throw my son
like,
out the window.
He strikes me as someone who thinks he's smarter than he is. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think by comparison, I think Imaishi strikes me as someone who's not really interested in thinking about whether or not he's smart at all, and that's okay. I just think that he's a hack. And it feels so cruel to say this.
I'm keeping my damn mouth shut, 'cause if I say anything about Gainax and Trigger, I'm getting canceled on the internet. I like Little Witch Academia. I love it even. And I like Eva, and that's all I have to say. I'm keeping my mouth closed.
I would say that generally speaking, I really like Gainax. I don't like almost anything that Trigger has done that I've seen. And the things from Trigger that I don't like are the things that Kazuki Nakashima's written, and I just like
you gotta cut this section.
so okay, let me put it in a slightly nicer way. I think he is way more confident in his ability to tackle multifaceted socio-political ideas than he actually is.
Yeah.
And I think that his work would probably be a lot stronger if the themes that his works tackled stayed purely
keep it simple,
like interpersonal.
Yeah.
Like I think what is so good about Little Witch Academia, and I think that this is true of a lot of Gainax productions, but that those Gainax productions invariably speak to more, is that it's kind of just about animation and reconciling what loving animation and making anime is about. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're Gainax expats.
Yeah. I want to say that Little Witch was the first thing that they did post Gainax.
Okay, yeah. Little Witch, I mean, there's theming there, but most of the theming just has to do with metaphors for animation and the animation industry. Yeah. So it's just kind of like,
Yeah. And I say this as someone who, like, it doesn't feel good for me to shit on Nakashima Kazuki, because he and Imaishi by extension, being kind of like, you know, the director-writer duo for a lot of those works, if I'm not mistaken, they are fighting for better representation and better exploration of socio-political themes in anime. You know, it hurts me to say that I think that Promare is bad, because I think that the fact that it has a gay kiss between two men in something that still resonated with a lot of straight men is really important.
But also, what if Elon Musk was actually a minority?
But what if Elon Musk was actually a minority?
I gotta shut my mouth. I gotta shut the fuck up. I'm gonna get dogpiled.
I haven't seen Brand New Animal, but I've heard that it falls into a lot of the same traps in ways that are bad in similar ways.
Is it another what if animals?
Yeah, what if animals were a metaphor for racism?
Oh no.
Yeah.
What if we just tackle actual racism in our media with like human characters?
Yeah, God forbid. God forbid.
We're not 5-year-olds anymore. Anyway, sorry everyone. I'm sorry. I'm fucked up. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry for being Filipino. It's not my fault. Morpheus says. Nothing I've said has meant anything. Don't worry about it. Have you ever heard of the Del Toro Quest anime? I haven't watched it, but it was based on a book series I loved, and I just liked how Emily Rada turned down multiple studios to adapt her book, but let an anime studio take on the property because her kids were massive weebs. I have not heard about that. That's very cute.
So it's a Western book series that was adapted by an anime studio, just because the author's kids were weebs. She thought that would be the most fun for them.
That has
I don't know anything about it. I had to look it up when I read this question, but I think it's extremely cute that exists. Cute.
That has what's his name? Hannibal's actor. I'm blanking on
Mads Mikkelsen?
Mads Mikkelsen. His kids being like, if you don't do this Rihanna music video, you're fucking stupid. What do you mean you don't know who Rihanna is? And him being like, okay, I'll do it. Flan says, since this OVA is an affront to God and all that is decent in visuals, I'll ask what the most aesthetically pleasing anime or manga you've seen is. For me, in terms of anime, it'd be Utena or Gunbuster, and for manga, Dorohedoro or X 1999.
Cardcaptor Sakura is one of the first that comes to mind.
The backgrounds are so
beautiful. Are incredible.
The costume design is beautiful.
It has the good grace of being available in 1080p, and it is just fucking immaculate looking. Like again, like the cleanup on that show is unreal. It is so just like tight visually.
I'll get a finished card captor.
Yeah, I miss it.
I've finished it.
Well, you got to finish it with me. I will say that I think that Aiken, aside from all the juvenile kind of stuff that holds a lot of it back, again, like, I think those character designs are really appealingly maximalist and very silly. I
think they're nightmares.
Yeah, but that's what I like about it, right? Like, I think that there's merit to something being so, like, loud in its over designedness.
Yeah.
As far as things that I think are more pleasing in like a traditional sense,
I mean, we already did a huge video about it, but I still think Tenchi Universe is like so beautiful.
Yeah.
Less so in the animation department, more so in the design department.
Yeah, but the OVA is really beautifully animated, and both films are really nicely animated. I mean, Urusei Yatsura, I think, is like, for the era that it came out in, and for how much it revolutionized things, I think it kind of inherently, like, it has kind of grandfathered itself into that to a degree, of being like so revolutionary.
Yeah.
And then, like, but specifically the movies are, I think, really incredible to look at.
Yeah. Urusei Yatsura is so interesting because depending on what season and what era of movie you watch, like, that's a show that has drastically different styles from piece to piece.
Right down to, like, really drastically different styles coming from different OVAs and films.
But I like all of them.
Yeah. Watching it evolve from something that looks like a much more standard kind of Tezuka-inspired kind of cartoony manga art style into something that just kind of came to sort of like co-revolutionize what it means to have Bishoujo characters in it. Is really fascinating.
I like Urusei Yatsura, but I don't know that I would even call it the most aesthetically pleasing.
I'm specifically thinking about the anime, or the film adaptations.
Yeah. The films are definitely kind of outliers. I'm thinking of the series as a whole. When I think of the series, I think of like pretty simple drawings a lot of the time, almost even kind of crude, but they're humorous and expressive, so they
definitely
get the job done. Geez,
I feel like there are so many really obvious ones.
For a more recent example, I think that the Hanako-kun manga is beautiful. I'm a huge fan of that artist.
Yeah, the art that you've shown me from it is like astonishingly skillful.
I love how dense her inking is in a way that like a lot of manga kind of isn't. Like a lot of manga is very thin, very delicate, very careful in its lines, but Arairo, at least I think that's her name, has almost like a polygonal quality to the way she paints
it's very
and it extends to how she colors. And these days I kind of find myself thinking like everyone who like draws anime kind of colors the same. Like there's like a few different levels of detail, but everyone kind of has the same approach to how they lay their colors down. But Arairo really blocks in colors in a way that I think is like stand out and unique. And that like really excites me as someone who, even though I say this generalization of like, oh, everyone does the same thing, I still really love like quote unquote anime art.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that the reason why it's kind of homogenized is because it works so well. Yeah,
it gets the job done, but it does make it stand out when someone's doing something kind of different with it. So I kind of enjoyed just reading that manga in terms of admiring how she stylizes things and how she inks.
I'm really glad that you have the art book from it.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's been really it's just really nice to flip through.
It is.
Gosh, I really wish I had a better answer for this. I mean, the Devilman OVAs from the 80s and early 90s that I talked about in my OVA, my VHS OVA video, I think are really, really incredible. Like kind of like, you know, like kind of like top of the art form kind of stuff. But I don't know that beautiful almost feels wrong to describe it that way because it is such a deliberately ugly story in so many regards.
I mean, I guess this person specifically said aesthetically pleasing rather than beautiful. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel like we've given enough answers that I can be satisfied not giving one that I think is 100% there.
Yeah.
Paprika is really incredible.
Paprika is very beautiful.
I wouldn't even say that's one of my favorite Satoshi Kon movies.
No, but it's visually...
There's some really incredible shit in it.
Yeah. Leota says, "Hi, Hazel."
Hello.
First, I just wanted to say I'm a prion researcher in real life, so when I heard your reference to Mad Cow in the new video, I cheered out loud. All right, my question. I finally started watching Golden Boy after your recommendation, and I'm loving it. Besides anime, are there any other raunchy or sex comedy manga, shows, movies, etc. that you like? What do you think distinguishes a good, enjoyable sex comedy from one that's cringy or dismal?
So, first of all, I have to say that I'm really glad that you liked the shout out to Mad Cow. I included that in there because I was literally looking at Wikipedia as like fucking what happened in that year to be like, all right, how can I kind of contextualize this in a funny way? I saw the beef exporting thing and I was like, that is so left field and so bizarre. Let me do some quick research to make sure I have my facts decently right on it. And I'll include that line in there just because I think that it is incredibly funny.
I'm so stoked you have a prion researcher in your audience base. That fucking rules.
Yeah, that's extremely funny to me. Manga, shows, movies, etc.
Bigata HK.
Yeah, Bigata HK really is one of the first that comes to mind for me.
I don't watch a lot of sex comedy or read.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the appeal for, like, I don't really go to movies for that because I get kind of grossed out seeing real people in those scenarios because all I can think is like, did you sign up for this? Like, are you being treated well?
3D pig disgusting.
Well, no, not even. It's just like the you know, I have to contend with the fact that these real people on screen might not be comfortable doing what it is that they're doing and all that. Just by the nature of how films are made.
Yeah.
Like in manga, it's like, you know,
this manga girl isn't gonna have her feelings hurt if her boob gets grabbed a little.
Well, right, yeah, because like the character herself transcending the work isn't like a real person with interiority, essentially. But yeah, I don't know that I have too many good recommendations other than that.
Dude,
other than
I need to make some fucking
HK.
anime lists and manga lists of stuff I've consumed. I don't remember anything.
The hit upcoming video game Love in a Bottle.
I'm making a Yuri dating sim point and click wherein the protagonist is a horny succubus girl who loves women.
And is super dumb. Yeah. Good stuff. I can't wait. Number one most anticipated game of 2022? Maybe. Is that what year it is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, that's the year that we are in currently.
Sure.
Yeah. Right?
Maybe.
What year is it?
I don't know.
What do I think distinguishes a good, enjoyable sex comedy from one that's cringy or dismal? I think just like kind of being, I don't know, original. Being original and having heart. And I think above all else, finding ways to keep characterization consistent within the sex comedy situations.
Yeah. Well, within
themselves.
your own tonal internal logic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like make it work within that constraint.
Yeah. Like I think a lot of bad ecchi tends to kind of just like bend its characters to whatever is going to get their clothes off.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of goes for any sort of narrative, is that you can sort of sense when an author kind of force their little dolls to go somewhere or do something just because that's what the author wanted, not because it's what the story or the characters called for.
Yeah.
And I think that's always kind of off-putting to an audience the more obvious it becomes.
Especially like the longer running a series is.
Well, the longer running it is, and the more times you become privy to what the author's proclivities are, the more it can quickly overstay its welcome, become kind of annoying. So, especially with ecchi anime, it's like, all right, here we go fucking again.
Yeah.
It's it shows its ass after not too long. Doozy Uzi says, "Hey Hazel, curious if you've seen the 2012 anime From the New World, and if so, what are your thoughts on it? I asked this because the character designer and animation director of the OP on Aiken was the director of that series, Masashi Ishihama."
So I haven't, and I don't like it. I looked at it. It looks cool, but I don't really have too much to say about it, not having seen it. However, this does remind me to say that the opening animation, the OP for Aiken is, I think, really solid. I think that's
pretty fun.
The like UI, quote unquote, like the kind of graphic design elements that pop up are a lot of fun. It was really fun to deconstruct screenshots of that opening to make that thumbnail. Kind of like bridging it out into like a widescreen with all the like color halftone effects and overlays and the like rainbows with like the like blocky squares kind of traveling through them. Like there's a lot of really fun, cute, colorful imagery in there that belied it being a much more interesting show than it was.
Damn shame. No Witch says, "Do you find it difficult to pay attention to background music? I know music is like your thing, but personally I find it hard to watch something with dialogue or play something while also listening to the background music. So when you mentioned the BGM in an anime, that's crazy as hell. I know I wouldn't have even noticed it despite how much I like BGM."
I think it took me a really long time to be able to naturally pick apart a work's disparate elements. Like, I used to not even really think about performances, like narration performances, or you know, vocal performances, if I wasn't really trying to listen for it, or if it wasn't like egregiously bad. I think it took me a long time to be able to kind of observe those things in isolation as I'm watching something. Also with Aiken, it was fucking boring as shit. So my mind kind of wandered to all the different corners of it. No, the OST I think was really solid.
Oh, really?
I'm saying that the anime as a whole was so boring that my mind inherently wandered to all the different corners of it in order to kind of like
find stimulation.
Yeah, find stimulation elsewhere. Exactly.
Well, damn, I don't remember a track from it.
There was the scene where everything went into slow motion, and there was like a faux classical piece in there. I thought that song was fun. Some other stuff in there.
Yeah. Archagent, Everlasting, and Siegfried Pinzer both ask, how do you make the tangents that you go on in your videos feel as relevant as you do? Seriously, it's a skill I'd love to get better at.
I have a really bad habit of not wanting to leave anything on the cutting room floor because I think that things are interesting. There were a few small things that I had to cut from that video that I really wanted to include just because I couldn't find a way to fit them in. But generally, as I'm structuring a video, I kind of just try to make sure that everything flows into everything else decently well. And I think that I have a pretty decent knack for finding vague connective tissue between things. I think that, like, a lot of times I'm not even sure if there's going to be connective tissue. If not, like, how to connect thoughts to one another, but kind of them all being thematic to one another. And I think a lot of times I just kind of have to sit and think about whether or not things, like, the thing about this video is that everything fell into place and it became really clear that there was a sort of there was a through line throughout every small facet of Aiken, and that was, you know, overwork. I guarantee you if another person had made that video, they might have seen a different through line. But that was the one that felt most relevant and most like the kind of culprit to how things came together. For the manga, for the anime, for the mangaka's other work, for his behavior. I think that that is that really just kind of came together that way.
I'll say, writing a script for a video right now, I admire your ability to make tangents feel like a part of the whole, because I find myself writing a lot of like so anyway, or like unrelated, but
so I will say this.
And I keep taking those qualifiers out.
I refuse to write a script linearly unless I know it's going to be like 10 minutes long. I have really like obsessively organized notes, and I will kind of cut and paste those pretty freely in order to make
like a reorganized
outline.
Outline.
Make sure that everything does segue into one another. Like I could have structured, and I use this as an example because I could have structured it a billion different ways without it negatively impacting the series much. Or excuse me, the video much. My VHS OVA video, I could have structured that a bunch of different ways, but that was just the way that kind of inherently connected everything to everything else. And that was one of the most difficult parts of that script writing process, was figuring out like, okay, if I connect this thought to this other thought and use that to seg these two anime together, that's going to be a really strong connection. But I also know that if I seg these two into one another, I can seg this into this one better. So it's just kind of a lot of puzzling it together, like kind of treating it quite literally as like a sequential jigsaw puzzle, I guess.
Yeah. Grimm's Child says, I noticed you tweeted about watching the Yokohama Shopping Diary series, which, much like Aken, are 2-episode OVAs based on a long-running series. Are there any other series that have received partial anime treatment that you'd be interested in seeing animated to completion? Also, how did you find out it was pronounced Aken, as I was convinced for years it was Aiken until hearing the anime? Japanese just has a very rigid pronunciation structure, and if you see it written in Japanese, there's pretty much no doubt that it's pronounced Aiken.
Yeah. Also, generally speaking, like, Japanese is like localized in English under like a pretty specific set of like consonant and vowel equivalents. So it's generally pretty easy to, once you know what means what, essentially how to pronounce stuff, and that tracks as well for like, you know, I kind of tend to fact check it by looking at how it's spelled.
There are English words that I've learned how to pronounce because I saw them written in Japanese.
Yeah. I've also,
this is me answering this question, but usually when I see a really good OVA based on a long-running series, I'm like almost kind of scared to spoil the magic by letting it run on too long.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, if the short OVA was really good, it might have sucked if it had been like a longer series. So I'm just gonna be set. Like, even with Yokohama, I was kind of like, the second one was a lot weaker than the first one. It was
you really think so?
I think it was
about as good.
It was still enjoyable, the second set of OVAs. But I still enjoyed it a lot. And I was kind of like, if this were a 12-episode anime, I definitely feel like it would run the risk of overstaying its welcome.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the time when something is really short, it's just kind of like exciting because I can go like, all right, when I get an itch for this, there's the whole manga.
Yeah.
and the thing about that too is that like, when I've watched a 12-episode anime and I've been like, all right, well now I want to read the manga to finish the story, I know I'm going to have to get through like fucking like 30 chapters sometimes of stuff that I've already seen told.
Oh, that doesn't bother me though, because I get to be like, oh, I can see like what slight differences there are, what changes they made.
Yeah. I think that it would have been nice to see Gunsmith Cats be a little bit longer, I think. I think, like, for me, I got a lot out of the length that it was. But the idea of it being a longer series. Yeah. But then you also have to make the concession. If it wasn't an OVA, it would look worse.
Yeah, and it looked really cool.
And it looked really good. Partial anime that I don't know. I don't really know that I have too many answers because I enjoy reading the manga so much as an extension of like a shorter anime adaptation. Yeah.
Complete Over-Analysis says, I saw you mention Drakengard 3. Thoughts on that game and that series?
I loved it. Talked about it a little bit in a few podcast episodes. I do a podcast called Pod Spirit. I always forget I need to qualify that because I don't talk about it too directly elsewhere than like on Twitter. If you're looking for that, you may need to search places like Spotify for Pop Spirit rather than Pod Spirit, because sometimes it doesn't show up. I loved everything about Drakengard 3. I'm reading the novellas right now. I had a lot of fun going through it. And I had a lot of fun playing through it with my darling wife.
Yeah, I will say I probably wouldn't have enjoyed that game if I had to be the one to play it. There's a lot of tedious, repetitive gameplay. But as far as the characters and the story went, I came out of it feeling sort of like, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I kind of felt like it didn't have any real themes and it didn't have any kind of real meaning, and that it kind of wasn't really going anywhere the way I kind of expected it to be. And that's not a good or a bad thing, but I guess maybe I wish I had tempered my expectation for that, because I think after playing Nier,
Nier is very much so thematically about something.
Yeah, I sort of expected a twist that made me realize what it was thematically about. And when it was kind of not anything, it was just kind of like, it's just these characters who are just in this situation and that's it. Yeah. I was kind of disappointed. But in terms of just, I mean, I love Zero. She's a great protagonist. I fucking love her dragon. I think the side characters are all mostly pretty funny. Some of them overstay their shtick a little bit. Yeah. In particular, we skipped a lot of
Octa's dialogue.
Just
because it was like, all right, I get it.
I get it. Your penis is big. I don't care. It's not funny. I didn't ask. Plus, you're not my fucking...
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the thing about it is that I know that the Drakengard games, even more so than any of Yoko Taro's other works, have a really strong through line of predestination as like a very major theme.
I have never interacted with other Drakengards.
Yeah. So I kind of knew that was a facet of it going in, and I think that allowed me to temper my expectations a little bit. I think that the novellas really helped to kind of flesh out the sort of like emotional through lines, if not necessarily the thematic ones. But yeah, I adored it. I think that it is so many of the things that I love about media at this stage in my life, and so many of the things that I'm drawn to all at once, that playing that game and then at the same time reading through Kyoko Okazaki's Pink, which is an incredible manga, I came out of both of those like, oh God.
Oh my God.
It's fine. It's fine. It was just my Omnicord falling over.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Such a fucking stupid sentence to just be able to say. You hear it, thought, oh, don't worry, it's just my fucking Omnicord. God damn it. I came out of both of those, having finished them both, being like, oh God, am I gonna run out of favorite pieces of, like, new favorite pieces of media to experience one day? Like, it was so crazy experiencing both of those completely off the cuff and being like, oh my God, like, those are both incredible. Yeah.
I should read the novelizations.
Yeah, they're good. I'm enjoying them so far. They definitely fill in some gaps, and I think they're very well written.
Nice.
You should read Pink.
I will. I have many things to read.
Yeah. Wait. Okay, I can't make out what it is.
Okay.
We have our window cracked right now. And,
that's why there's so much noise outside.
Yeah.
Frankenval says, what's some of your favorite anime from the weird early 2000s Digipaint era? Oh, this is kind of a repeat question.
Oh, wait. Shit. Yeah, I think we did answer that elsewhere. I talk about a few of them in my next video, which will be out on Wednesday.
Woohoo! Renoa says, you mentioned Re Cutie Honey. It's definitely one of my personal favorites, and I was wondering if your opinions on it and the series, and the series as a whole. Ree's incarnation of Natsuko definitely put it up there for me.
Yeah, Natsuko's really great in that adaptation. I'm unfortunately not too terribly familiar with a lot of other Honey adaptations. I know you tried watching the most recent one.
Yeah, it was kind of a return to shoujo form-ish.
To shoujo form?
Just in terms of the style. I mean, maybe that's bullshit. Like, I know that Natsuko, like, kind of had more of her original look as like Honey's weird Catholic school friend.
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just really weird. I was kind of put off by its pacing and its style. I really want to watch the live action movie.
Yeah, me too. The one that Cutie Honey is partially based on. But we're waiting to get 2 of our friends over to watch it.
Yeah, we need to do that.
I have not read too terribly much of the manga, but I know that it's like everything that Go Nagai made during that period. Fucking insane and like really, really like remorselessly transgressive. I don't know that I can have much of an opinion on it, not having experienced it firsthand.
Yeah.
But I think that Nagai is a spectacle who makes spectacles.
Oh yeah,
is all that I can say.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about more of it. I'm kind of curious about is Flash the one that's kind of aimed at young girls more so?
I'm not sure. Is there one?
I think so.
Imagining Cutie Honey of all things.
Well, because they tried to like market it to girls so that they could sell dolls, like fashion dolls and stuff.
Yeah,
at least I believe.
Yeah.
I was curious about that one because it's cute, but it's like way more straight, and I don't like the way that.
Oh God!
Oh, don't choke. Seiji, is that his name?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
He doesn't have his cute like anime sideburns in that iteration. So
What's
I was
the
like,
point?
man, if you're gonna make it straighter, at least let him keep his sideburns.
Yeah, the Go Nagai sideburns are such a charm point.
So I don't know. I have a periphery interest and appreciation for Cutie Honey, and I like her just as a
She's
entity.
so cute. Yeah.
But in terms of old anime and manga with huge sprawling different series, I'm probably gonna try to dive into more Lupin first.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Yeah. Armuda says, did Shintaro Ishihara's death happen during or before the video scripting process? And how happy were you to find out you were no longer sharing a planet with that abscess of pathetic xenophobia?
So I barely knew who he was as I was first entering into this, which means I did not know that he died until I was working on it. And he died like a week after I started researching him specifically. Or sorry, a week before, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So I was reading about him and then I was like, is this fucker still alive? And then it was like death date, February 2022. I was like, well, hey, there we go.
What's going on?
So when I read that, I was like, all right, I got to make the note to put the fucking Packwatch RIP Bozo image in there. With the Chief Keef song. Yeah, that was like the punchline to that aristocrats joke of a man. Yeah, he got the fucking Dragon Quest composer treatment. I can't remember his name, but
yeah, that guy.
They're basically clones of one another. Like they're the kind of like archetypical like cartoonishly ghoulish like Japanese Prince Philip types. So yeah, fuck that guy. I'm glad he's dead.
Peter Chicolo says, when you decided to dig into this, was there a specific person or type of person you were hoping Alan Smithy would be?
I went into it knowing I wouldn't be able to identify it, honestly. And I didn't really have too much interest in trying to figure it out because I didn't think the answer could possibly be interesting.
I think in my mind, just because of the name, I expected him to be one of those like hardcore weeb gaijin who like moved to Japan and like try really hard to break into anime.
Oh, and then got stuck with that.
Get stuck with Aiken.
And then used a Western pseudonym for his Western. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I pictured when I heard Alan Smithy.
That's funny.
Yeah. Griffin says, with the reoccurring mentions of Tails Gets Trolled and even a physical book of it in this video, are there any other pieces of whack early 2000s Sonic-related media that you enjoy or have fond memories of? Oh, you shouldn't have asked me this question. I have answers. The two others that stand out to me was Super Mario Bros. Z, which I think you might have mentioned before, and a weird sprite animated series on YouTube about Kirby moving into a house with Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, and then promptly falling in love with some sprite animated anime girl, and then shortly after becoming a pink hedgehog.
That's really cute. I don't know if I have mentioned Super Mario Bros. Z before or not, but I followed it very obsessively as a child. I was really into it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really fun. I don't know
Okay, so I don't remember the name, but I'm certain that if I describe it, people who know will know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I religiously read the sprite comic for Sonic, wherein I'm pretty sure it predominantly used like the Sonic Advance or Sonic Battle sprites, but it used them.
They all did.
On Earthbound backgrounds. And this was long before I had played or really seen that much of Earthbound. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of my first exposure to ever seeing like interiors and settings in Earthbound.
That's funny.
And in this really weird way, the sprite comic being set with Earthbound backgrounds kind of like gave me this like I felt like I had lived in that world already a little bit.
That's so funny.
Come time I played Earthbound. And, like, it's all the more reason why I fucking love the backgrounds in that game and, like, why the interiors feel like home to me.
I didn't know that. That's so funny.
I don't remember what it's called. And honestly, I don't remember if it was funny even, like, slightly at all. I just remember I read it religiously as a kid. It's kind of funny that sprite comics are a lost art form. No.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just like the fucking like something awful like fucking cringe webcomic thread crowd kind of like made that fall out of fashion.
They ruined it for all of us.
I know. For as much as I loved Sonic as a kid, I think I loved it mostly in isolation. So I don't know that I have too much of an answer for that.
I feel like I probably have more answers that I'm not recalling, but I'll get back to you if I think of them. Jay Casillas says, what are your guys' favorite and least favorite Danganronpa trials? By the way, it's pronounced... Oh, yeah, I pronounced it right. Yay. Casillas. The mispronunciation in the last video was funny. Wait, did I mispronounce it in the last video?
I don't remember. I don't remember anything.
This just goes to show how fucking stupid I am, because sometimes my brain works and sometimes it doesn't.
Favorite? Oh gosh, it's gonna be really hard for us to. We're gonna have to choose our words very carefully.
It's okay. I know how to say this one without spoiling. Okay. I fucking hate the trial in V3, and all I need to say is ropeway. Fuck that fucking trial.
Fucking God.
Fuck that fucking ropeway. That fucking trial's so convoluted and
I fucking hate all the trials in V3. I think they're all overwrought fucking garbage. That first one is amazing.
The first one's amazing.
The first one might be the best in the entire series. But the rest of them are fucking overwrought garbage.
They're so long. They're so goddamn long. You play those trials forever. And it's like halfway through, you, the player, have already figured out who probably did it.
There's a trial in that game where there is a one-off piece of dialogue that crops up that spoils it. And you, as the player, do not get the opportunity to say, yo, they literally just said that they did it. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't get the chance to fucking make the declaration early.
Nope. You just gotta put all the pieces together.
Yeah, I think that game is borderline unplayable.
That's so funny, because you used to say it was
I think that thematically, it is my favorite. I think that it fucking sucks.
As a game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I can agree with that.
I love how bold that game is in so many regards. I think that basically every other game that does what it does it better. Like it is a lesser Metal Gear Solid 2. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I still think that in those ways, you know, despite having my least favorite cast of the 3 games, and my least favorite trials and my least favorite pacing, I think that the kind of gumption that it has in that final stretch is probably my favorite. Yeah. If I were to replay them, I might flip back to 1 being my favorite.
Trial 1 or Danganronpa 1?
No, Danganronpa 1.
Danganronpa 1 is kind of like, how do I put it? It's the most platonic Danganronpa.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the most palatable, it's the most accessible, but I think in a lot of ways it also lacks a lot of the wackiness that I love specifically about 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But simultaneously it lacks a lot of their problems as a result.
I think 1 is the tightest, but it has lower highs and higher lows. As a result,
yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
2 is my favorite game, but I'm pressed to say which trial is my favorite.
I know that I'm speaking more about the chapter as a whole, but the chapter in 2 that has the Moonlight Syndrome reference is my favorite chapter in any Danganronpa game. I think.
Interesting.
Overall. I just think that it's like such a I think that it's one of those rare instances where not being intimately familiar with the source material of what it's referencing with the game inside a game, with it being so eerie in visual and in how cold it comes off, really heightens the mystery. And the kind of like creep factor there.
Yeah.
Like I think that entire trial plays out in a way that feels really kind of emotionally distant.
Yeah.
Or the chapter, I mean.
Yeah.
And I really like that about it. I think it's a lot of fun.
I'm trying to think of how to describe this trial without spoiling it.
Which game?
In 2. And I don't remember which numbered trial it is, so I can't just say it by number.
Anybody who knows what trial number it is a true blue pervert, and I respect them immensely, but I don't have that kind of database.
I like the trial where I think they determine pretty early on that they think there is a traitor among them, or a spy. Right?
In 2?
In 2. Let's just say it's the trial where they try to suss out who the quote-unquote traitor is. And that's all I'll say.
I don't know which one that is.
I could have just said it's the one that involves Gungnir, the spear.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Okay, it is that one. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like, I knew that was going to be your answer. Like, there was no way it couldn't be. I think that one plays out really, really, like, in a really fun way.
There's an aspect of it that I want to say so badly, but, like, honestly, even just mentioning characters in Danganronpa can be, like, a spoiler, because you're like, clearly that character lives to see this.
Yeah. So let's I don't want to have to edit this at all.
That chapter canonicizes that a certain character in the cast can drive a truck, and I think that's really funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's a scene in that trial where a character says some cuss words, and it's one of the funniest scenes in the entire franchise.
I also love that chapter, or that aspect.
Yeah.
Christopher Roger Simmons says, hi y'all, since the Patreon is growing and you're getting a lot of questions, would you ever consider doing a month of lighter questions? Like having a month where people ask questions that are easily answered yes or no, or a month where people ask you to choose between 2 preferences. Oh, this is kind of fun. Turn your Patreon into a splat fest. Like ketchup or mustard, PS2 or GameCube, Linus or Lucy, parentheses, I prefer Linus. It's up to y'all how much to elaborate, and it could lighten the load when you need a break or see family over the holidays. Just a thought. Signed, Chris from California. That's a really cute idea.
I think that would be really smart if I ever go a month without a video.
Yeah.
I think that would be the circumstance I'd want to do that under.
Yeah.
Personally, I like letting these things run as long as they need to, even though it can be kind of a pain to do 2 hours as we've gone.
I'm not going to lie. I looked at the length of this question document and my heart sank a little because I was like, we're going to be here a while.
Yeah. But it's not my fault that people ask good questions. I think a lot of these are pretty fast to speed through, though. So
they're good questions.
Yeah.
Just a Mountain Soul said, so as Sonic enjoyers and fan service enthusiasts, how did y'all feel when 2 worlds collided in SA2 with the introduction of jiggle physics on Rouge the Bat? As a baby kid, I never really took note of it, but they really did that in my silly little Sonic game, huh?
So I've heard some people say that they removed that from the American version, but I feel like
toned it down.
I really vividly remember it still being there.
She still jiggles when she jumps, but I think they toned it down quite a bit.
The physics are so like springy that I think they're really funny. I never noticed it when I played the game.
I noticed it. I've told the story like 20 million times, and I may have even told the story like in a past
do it again.
FAQ we've done, but one of my other early like gay child things was I had the guidebook for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and it was through this guidebook that I found out that the characters all had unlockable costumes, and I think you had to get like all S ranks in all of their missions in order to unlock these costumes, which is fucking goddamn hard because some of the missions in that game are really unfair. So I really wanted to unlock Rouge's because her fucking titties are so like shaded and out in her alternate costume. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I have to see that in the game. Because it was just like one like official render of it in the guidebook. I was like, I need to see more. And I even like tried to use Action Replay to cheat so I could get all S ranks, but I don't think I was ever able to like get it to work all the way. So tragic, but beautiful. Osakan one says, you keep dropping Precious Park in your videos, and I'm vibing every time to Koda Hoshino goodness. But I'm curious on your feelings about Armored Core for answer personally.
I've literally never played any of the Armored Core games. I just like the music.
Fake fan. Robin R says, hey Hazel, good work on the video. Big fan. Aiken had a longer tail on it than it deserved because Kirika's design meant she became a hero character for fetish communities. Oh.
I didn't know about this.
Can you think of any other characters or shows that were needlessly popular because their character design struck a chord? Crystal from Star Fox.
Whoa, you're on that one. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's a really good one. Manga critic and scholar Ito Go has this concept that he calls kyara, which is the sort of life that a character or a character design has outside of their source material. And I think you see that in almost any like long-lasting manga or anime series.
I mean, Suisei Seki was kind of
Suisei Seki was one of those, almost more so in the West than in Japan, right? Oh, yeah. Was she also a 2chan?
I think she was also kind of a 2chan icon. I could be wrong
from Rosen Maiden for context. The heterochromia green outfit Desu girl.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, I feel like all of Rosa Maiden actually is a good example of this, and the characters being iconic just because people like their designs, because truthfully, Rosa Maiden's not that good. Like, Peach Pit is kind of an interesting disaster.
You're saying this is someone who had it as a special interest.
It was my special interest for, like, a long-ass time. It's not that good, and I don't know why it struck such a chord with otaku at the time, because there was better stuff airing at that time. But for some reason, they loved those funky little dolls.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because their designs were iconic.
Yeah.
Mace says, hello, Hazel. New sub, but absolutely love your content. Especially this video has some very based POVs on class solidarity and anti-capitalist retort. What were your main life inspirations and people for these points of view?
My family. I grew up really poor. The stepdad woke up at fucking like 3 a.m. and worked until like 6 p.m. every single day. And like including Saturdays and sometimes even Sundays a lot of the time to make ends meet for us. And my mom worked from home while raising my little sister throughout a lot of that, again, just to struggle to make ends meet. Like they had their first kid together, my kid sister, like right when the recession hit. And it was really dicey throughout like a lot of that period. And that was kind of like the age, like I was right at the age where the recession hit, right as I started to get kind of like conscious of the world around me.
Yeah.
And, politics by extension. So that was, I think, pretty formative across the board. Even if a lot of that came with me looking in retrospect. I wouldn't say that I really have ever had too much interest in reading like theory or anything like that. Like I think that life experience has kind of been the primary facet of where I draw from those feelings.
Yeah.
But, I just generally like, learning about history, I think has proven to be a little bit more beneficial for me than reading things like theory or like, like opinion pieces or things like that. Not to say that they don't have value, but just that that's where I come from.
Yeah. Robert Denby says, loving the videos, and sorry to ask a question that pertains to the earlier Cozy JRPG video.
Totally fine. Feel free to do that for any of the older ones.
There's a Saturn JRPG from Magic Knight Rayearth that I definitely recommend if you can get your hands on it. It's short and has an amazing localization courtesy of Working Designs, who adds some fun flourishes to the characters.
I've played like 20 minutes of it. I think it's really fantastic. I think the translation is really great. I would love to play more of it. I think that it's probably an example of something where the the game is almost like the more ideal way to play it.
Yeah, I'd be curious about it because watching a few episodes of the anime,
it's extremely standard.
It's extremely standard to a point where I was kind of like, I don't know if I have the attention span for this, but I could see it working really well in a game format.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow, sorry for that weird mouth noise I just made.
It's fine. It's staying in.
Rachel says, I read Otaku Japan's Database Animals on your recommendation, and it blew my mind a little bit. Are there any other books you would recommend in this vein? I was eyeing a book by Saito Tamaki, if you have any opinions to share about his work.
So I haven't read the Saito Tamaki book that I own, which is Beautiful Fighting Girl. I also have his book on Hikikomori. I haven't read that one yet either. But from what I gather and from the interviews with him that I've read in a book that I will recommend in a second, I think that he's an incredibly empathetic kind of foil to Hiroki Azuma, the author of Database Animals. For as much as I love Database Animals, and I think there's a lot of really, really insightful looks into otaku in there, I don't think that Azuma is quite as sympathetic as the work kind of implies, if that makes sense. I think things that he said about otaku outside of that book are a lot less they come off as a lot less insightful because they read more like Old Man Yelling at Cloud a little bit. But the content of the work inside of Database Animals is, I think, really incredible. I would really recommend everything that Patrick W. Galbraith has written. The Moe Manifesto is a completely invaluable piece of writing that collects a bunch of interviews with different figures in Japanese otaku and anime and manga culture that don't really get too much of a voice in the English language. And I think that their insights say so much more than just about moe or otaku in themselves, which is kind of about the various mediums that all of this kind of congregates under. I think that that book is really fantastic. It took me like twice as long to read as it should have, because I kept being like, I need to read this out loud to Alyssa because I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, I want to read that whole book as someone who was kind of invested in early moe culture.
Yeah. I think that it paints a really broad depiction of a subject that is exactly as broad as it is painted as. And I think that its kind of refusal to have a definitive read on moe as a concept makes it like a much better book as a result. But he also has a book that I'm really excited to read called Otaku and the Struggle for Imagination in Japan. That is like a book that is entirely from his own perspective. And I think I don't know, I'm just really excited to read it. Aside from that, like, there are a lot of other books that I haven't read just yet that I'm really looking forward to. I haven't finished it, but the portions of the history of hentai manga that I've read have been very elucidating and very useful. But I can really only recommend it to somebody who is... I don't think that should be your first or your second book on the kind of more complicated world of otaku media that you read. Like, I think that reading Database Animals and then reading Moe Manifesto and reading passages of a few other texts really helped to prime me for that one. Because I think for as much as it kind of helps to ease people into this world, I think it does treat certain things for a given that would feel a little bit more alarming or loaded or even dismissive than they actually are if you have had the opportunity to get a little bit more context in first. So the history of hentai manga by Kimi Rito is really invaluable. I'm really happy to have it be there, but I wouldn't say that is one that I would recommend blanketly, especially because of how graphic some of the images inside of it are.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I don't read. I have no recommendations. Just kidding. I read. I just haven't been reading about anime.
Yeah. You've been reading a lot. You read more than I do.
Yeah.
You just read fiction.
Yeah.
That's not a you just as in you're reading lowly fiction, but rather your area of expertise.
That was lowly LOWLY to be clear.
Oh my god. Thank you for clarifying. It didn't even register.
Yeah, I just read Annihilation. It was fun.
Yeah.
Fun little read for anime fans.
Yeah, and you read a bunch of Anne Rice books.
Oh yeah. Anne Rice is weird.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
To
God rest
a
her
freak
soul.
for real.
A freak for real. And I read about dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Ars Holtep the Insufferable.
What a good name.
Says, this video was a wild ride. When starting this project, did you initially intend to cover all the topics you did, or did you start with a specific thing to cover and had the project grow in scale as you researched it? That's almost how all your videos
That's
go.
how all my videos go. Every now and again, a video will splinter out from another video. And that was the case with Aken. Mm-hmm. Originally, I've been planning for a long, long time to do a video with I haven't quite decided on the phrasing of the title, but it's essentially like, are these the worst anime of all time? In which I kind of give a more sympathetic read on a lot of the anime that people consider the worst ever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have an impression of you.
What's that?
Okay, here's my impression of Hazel planning a video.
Okay.
Alyssa, I just heard about this crazy OVA called Booby Butt Bashers, and like it has no reviews online ever, so I'm gonna watch it, and it's gonna be like a quick like 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute video. It's gonna be great.
And then I'm like,
it's gonna be so easy. No, don't my impression. It's gonna be so easy. It's gonna be so quick. I'm gonna be done with it this week. And then you're like, I just found out that the director
tried to assassinate the president
and dated David Lynch in the 70s. And then you're like, oh my god, like I just found out that I don't know.
Yeah.
There was limited time I don't know. I can't even joke panties because that's all right.
Yeah. There's always a point where I'm like, well, fuck, I guess I have to do this now.
Yeah. And then it branches into like 50 other things.
I had like 3 of those happen this week while I'm trying to get a different video done. It's been a crazy month.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So a lot of my videos, I kind of see a piece of media that I haven't engaged with, and I'm like, that seems interesting. I'm going to file that away in something that I think I already want to, in like a broader umbrella topic that I think I want to cover. Mm-hmm. But as I continued to look into Aken, it became more and more of its own thing. Like I saw the Alan Smithy thing and I was like, oh, this could either be a section of another bigger video, mm-hmm. or I could make it like a 15-minute thing. Mm-hmm. And then as I kept researching, I kept stumbling into more bullshit, and then it became an hour and fucking 10 minutes or however long it is. So yeah, no, I never know what to expect going in.
Yeah.
The entire section about censorship in that video was going to be me saying, yeah, he did a manga called fucking My Bride the Elementary Schooler. That's fucked up. This dude is a cretin. He keeps getting banned on Twitter. That was it. And then I was like, well, I need to look into why he's been getting banned. Mm-hmm. And then I saw people, okay, so I don't think I actually mentioned it. The whole reason I found out about that manga getting persecuted or getting used as an example of harmful manga was because somebody brought it up on Japanese Twitter, mm-hmm. in reference to Akamatsu Ken getting appointed to the board of like manga literacy or whatever it is within mm-hmm. the Japanese parliament or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, some random Japanese Twitter user was like, "Oh, this is such a weird thing." When someone who's kind of like who makes work similar to Ken Akamatsu was getting like bashed by the Japanese, like Tokyo's government just a decade prior, and I was like, mm-hmm. wait, what's this? Mm-hmm. So I had to look into that whole charade, and then the next thing I knew, the video had doubled in length.
Yeah. That happens. Well, and then it's like when you're excited about a topic, you kind of want to like say everything you have to say
especially
about it.
Because like everything that I cover, I'm the topics that I'm drawn to are things that not a lot of other people have covered, because I'm very much so the mindset of like, if someone has already talked about this thing in depth, I don't see any benefit in me contributing to it if it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless I feel really strongly about like getting the word out there or whatever.
Sure.
I tried to bring a little bit more to the table when it's something that I don't think anybody else would in their right mind cover. So I kind of like, I when I was doing a video every 2 weeks, I was constantly kicking myself for not having time to look deeper into things. Like there are things that I've learned adjacent to videos that I've made that I would love to go back in time and include. I didn't know that Mamoru Oshii said all that dumb shit about female friendship and whatever in the context of the adaptation of Urusei Yatsura.
Yeah.
That would have informed so much of my criticism of Vladlev if I'd known it, but I didn't have the time to do a bunch of reading about him. I had to go in knowing what I already knew as someone who's a fair weather fan, I'll say, of a lot of his stuff. I don't think that makes the video worse, but I think it makes it a little incomplete compared to what I would like to have done with it.
Yeah. It's hard. I know that it's kind of silly saying like, oh, you just talk about anime on YouTube, but I think people do underestimate how much like raw baseline knowledge you need to talk about anything.
I underestimated that
form online.
I underestimated that for like a year,
Yeah.
And every time I think that I'm like, okay, I think I'm decently understood and decently read on things, that I can start piecing things together easier, something else comes along that's like, whoa, this seems like a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that that's doubly so with something like anime and manga, where this is a culture that we are really still only getting bits and pieces of.
Yeah.
As Westerners.
Yep. Pinecone says, don't know if this is too off topic, but do you have a...
You skipped one.
Oh, I did. Ryan Fallman says, from seeing the Gunbuster clips in this video as well as the Noriko figure I saw that you have, had me wondering what your opinion is of the show.
I haven't seen it since I was 17, but I adored it, and I considered it one of my favorite anime ever at the time. I would really like to rewatch it with my wife, Alyssa, who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, I'll watch it with you.
Yeah.
I'll crump with you, sweetheart. Okay. Now Pinecone says, don't know if this is too off topic, but do you have a favorite moment of storytelling in a video game? Some specific scene or use of a technique that really stuck with you that could only come from games as a medium? I feel that way about a lot of games, honestly.
I feel like the obvious answer is some of the stuff from various Metal Gear Solid games.
My obvious answer is Final Fantasy VII. Like, I feel like there are a lot of really beautiful, like, iconic sets. In Final Fantasy VII.
But if we're speaking like specifically about things that kind of use the medium of video games, like the interactive element to kind of further things, it gets a little bit harder for me to think of specific examples because a lot of that feels almost like a given to me. Like it feels like such an extension of the medium storytelling at a baseline that I tend not to think about things as being particularly exceptional. Although it's been on the mind, so I will say Drakengard 3 does some really excellent stuff like that, but for comedy.
They say a lot of swears, but sometimes they just randomly censor stuff for comedic effect, and it's funny and silly. Yeah,
like that's an extremely explicit game. Like that has to be the hardest M rating a Japanese game has ever gotten. And they'll still like go ahead and just like block certain things out because it's funnier that way. Like right down to the violence.
I don't know if I would say it's that hard of an M rating.
Are you kidding me? They talk so much about penises and sex and like weird kinds of sex and
it's not that bad.
for a console game in 2013.
You don't see anything, so it's
but
fine.
you do know that Blood is like an instant 0Z rating, right?
Well, I
like,
mean, it's not as much anymore, but
maybe not. But like the only other
pretty cartoony in Drakengard 3.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it's pretty cartoony.
I'm saying that is, for what it is, an extremely transgressive game.
Sure.
For when it came out, for the console it came out on, for the market that it was from, and for the market that it was brought over here into. You know, like that game goes some pretty insane places with very little remorse.
Yeah.
And it still manages to self-censor for pure comedy in ways that I think are really funny.
Literally the opening cutscene, Mikhail taking like a huge shit.
Yeah, it's him pissing.
Or it's him taking a huge piss.
Yeah, he pisses himself. Yeah. Yeah, no, like it's like that game plays with comedy in a way that it's just like unlike a lot of other games, period. Oh god, I feel like there's a really Nier plays with pastiche in a way that I think is similarly a lot of fun. Like at a certain point, and this is like barely a spoiler, at a certain point you realize that each dungeon is a direct reference to a different kind of game, or a different game in particular, that it just does that because it clearly really loves the medium.
I don't know if this is a tangent, but
that's fine.
I just want to talk about it because it's been on my mind ever since we all played it. But me and my friends played Inscription.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of amazing shit in there.
There's so much. So I'm kind of fascinated. I wish I remembered his name, but the guy who helmed this project, he also did Pony Island and The Hex, which I'm working on watching someone play through. And it's clear that he has a proclivity for like genre bending in video games and kind of like making sort of like love notes to other genres, other games in sometimes more obvious ways, sometimes in more subtle ways. But something I really loved about Inscription is how when you start playing it, at least for me, I knew so little about it that I didn't know what to expect from it. There were a lot of moments of like, I don't even want to give exact examples because I would really love for people to play it blindly, but just going in and kind of like, as we understood that the game was going to throw twists at us, we then started like trying to guess where it was going to take us next. And sometimes we were right and sometimes we were totally wrong. Like, as a small example that I'm going to obfuscate some details from, there come certain points in your runs of Inscription where you are prompted to make a card. And obviously, because you're creating the card, you want it to be like a really good, powerful one. But then in our next playthrough, the card, I think it just so happened to not come up. Like, we never got it. So we were like, oh, did we create a card to get used against us later? And I won't tell you if it did or didn't, but that kind of like trying to guess where the game was leading us, what kind of curveball it was going to throw at us, was just something that I really enjoyed, that I don't think a lot of video games have made me feel in a while. It did some fourth wall breakery that I think succeeded and failed in some regards, but like it did some interesting fuckery, like especially in the last portion of it. It's also a game that when you first play it, gosh, I don't know, like there's no way you can guess what the second and third act of that game is going to be like. And I really want to beg anyone who's listening to go into it as blindly as possible. I wouldn't even say it's a perfect game. I think that I had a lot of problems with it. I think I, like halfway through, almost felt kind of fatigued with the twists it was giving me. But it's just a video game, and it's clear that it's a game that's cognizant of, like, you know, video games and card games. Like, its mechanics are kind of referential to, like, Hearthstone and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and probably something else I'm not aware of. And it does so in, like, a very loving way that is also very uniquely its own thing. And also, like, damn, this is unrelated to storytelling, but, like, the sound design and like the tactile nature of it as a video game is so good. Like interacting with anything in the game feels great. Kind of a tangent again. I know it's not even like necessarily a super storytelling heavy game, but it does a lot of like implicit bespoke storytelling with its setting and its mechanics, and the twists it throws at you in a way that had me really excited, and like I couldn't stop thinking about it until we finished it. So Inscription comes with a high recommendation from me. Welcome back, Hazel.
Doki Doki Literature Club is a really obvious one, but I think it is one of my favorite examples.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's like so fun and so playful.
Yeah.
While still being very like thematically relevant with its scares and with the way that it plays with the medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I know this ran really long. But it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you.
New video really soon. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.